Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Shyam Kagur here. Before we start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, kindly do let me know. Give me a thumbs up or let's say YES, alphabet S, anything is okay with me. Okay, great. Good morning everyone. Now, before I start the discussion, some of you are asking, sir, why was there no class yesterday? Reason was very simple. Some of the students complained to me or complained to us saying that they are not able to open the portal, they are not able to open or access the class. There was some technical glitch, and that is a precise reason we had to cancel the class yesterday. Right? Today and Saturday, right? For whatever class that has been cancelled yesterday, the class will be taken up on Saturday. Please don't worry about it. It's not that I'll run through everything today itself and finish right according to the schedule. No, right? So today we'll continue as it is. Where we left off, we'll start from there, and Saturday we will take up whatever is left out. Okay, done. So with that caveat, let me start the discussion. What we have done in the last class, that is day for yesterday. What we have done, we started with the concept of planning. Right, we started with the idea of a planning. Now, what are the important points we have discussed in planning? Right, point number one: planning basically means the economic planning means government, in order to achieve certain objectives, welfare, growth objectives, will allocate the resources, will assess and allocate the resources. That is the concept of a planning. In case of India, we followed 5-year planning model. We started the planning concept with the establishment of Planning Commission in 1950, and thereafter in 1951 we introduced the first 5-year plan, and thereafter, right, we have introduced 12 5-year plans. We have implemented 12 5-year plans, but we have not implemented all the 5-year plans continuously. Continuously, all the 5-year plans have not been implemented. For example, if you remember, after third 5-year plan, there was a gap. Sixth 5-year plan was implemented 2 times, right? Once by the Morarji Desai government and the second one by Indira Gandhi government. After seventh 5-year plan, again there was a crisis, there was a gap, there was a break taken in the form of annual plans again. So all the 5-year plans have not been implemented continuously. There have been gaps, there have been stoppages here and there. 12th 5-year plan, which was supposed to be implemented from 2012 to 2017, 12 to 17, the government changed, or the party which formed the government, right? The elections were conducted in 2014. A new government was formed, and the new government felt there is no usage of the old authority such as Planning Commission for India now. So they abolished the Planning Commission, and we have one more authority called as Niti Aayog, which we will continue the discussion in some time. So Planning Commission was abolished, and that is the precise reason 12th 5-year plan was not implemented completely also. Midway it was stopped. The implementation was stopped. So we have seen important provisions, or let's say important points, 3 to 4 points in all the 12 5-year plans. Please keep on revising. Keep on revising. For example, fourth 5-year plan is known for, let's say, the concept of what is that? Population control measures. Fifth 5-year plan, sixth 5-year plan, right? Various schemes which have been implemented, right? Various provisions to address regional disparities, right? The concept of Harrod Domer model in the first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, Mahalanobis strategy in the second 5-year plan, the focus on basic industries, focus on heavy industries in the second 5-year plan, right? So, etc., etc. So we have discussed, right? Or for that matter, inclusive growth mentioned in the 11th 5-year plan, 12th 5-year plan. LPG reforms that were implemented in mainly in the 8th 5-year plan, but before that also, liberalization reforms had started even in the 7th 5-year plan. So I hope you understand. We have discussed various important points regarding all these individual 5-year plans. Revise it. If you revise it twice, thrice, automatically you'll be able to remember it for a longer duration. Then we started Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. Niti Aayog, National Institution for Transforming India. Niti Aayog was established in 2015. Niti Aayog basically has two very important pillars. There are two parts to Niti Aayog. Right? Again, there are multiple components in Niti Aayog. The two very important parts are one, the governing council. Right? We have a governing council, and we also have full-time organization. Right? Full-time organization, a governing council. Governing council will have a representation of the central government, that is, Prime Minister will be the chairperson, and states also are present. In case of full-time organization, Prime Minister is the chairperson. Apart from Prime Minister, we have experts, we have vice chairperson, we have CEO, right, etc. Then we discussed what are the objectives of Niti Aayog, then the comparison between Niti Aayog and the Planning Commission. Okay. Now we are supposed to start from here. What is the importance of Niti Aayog? What is the importance of Niti Aayog? Right? Why Niti Aayog is so important? Point number one, it will hold consultations with various stakeholders in the economy, will seek inputs from them, and will give advice to Government of India, will give recommendation to Government of India. Is it clear? It's very simple. It will hold consultations. Consultation means it will talk to industry leaders. It will seek feedback. It will take feedback from them, and in the form of advice, in the form of recommendations, it will provide it to Government of India. That is the first one. Second one, it will also, right, it will also take, right, various recommendations, or it will also conduct various studies on industries, on manufacturing, in service sector, etc., and will give advice to Government of India. These are the objectives, and the Niti Aayog is conducting them, right? So third one, it will act as an intermediary. It will act as a mediator, intermediary between the central government and state government, will also provide a lot of inputs to central government by seeking advice from the state governments. It will promote spirit of competitive federalism. Right? What is this idea of a competitive federalism? Day for yesterday we have discussed. The Niti Aayog will promote cooperative federalism as well as competitive federalism. Under competitive federalism, Niti Aayog will publish multiple rankings which will promote competition between the states. For example, we have a composite water management index. We have another index by the name of export preparedness index. So Niti Aayog will publish multiple reports, multiple indices, as a result of which competition between the states will be promoted. It will also promote spirit of competitive federalism. And we also have an office within Niti Aayog. There is also an office, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office, DMEO, Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office. DMEO will basically track the performance of various schemes being implemented by the ministries of central government. Central government ministries will have multiple schemes. Funds are allocated. Funds are utilized for the implementation of various programs, projects, schemes, etc. So it is the duty of Niti Aayog to keep a track how the ministries are performing, how the schemes are being implemented, etc. So that is the role of Niti Aayog, right? That is in terms of developing and monitoring various schemes of the union government. So this is why Niti Aayog is so important. Now, what has been the contribution of Niti Aayog so far? In what way Niti Aayog has contributed to the functioning of Government of India? Has it played any important role, etc.? Point number one, all of you heard of bullet train project? We have not discussed. Today we will discuss it. Don't worry. Please do let me know. All of you heard of bullet train project? The bullet train project, before implementation, Niti Aayog conducted a study about the bullet train project, about the feasibility of the bullet train project. So there was a committee which was set up to study the feasibility of the bullet train project between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. Right? So that is point number one. Point number two, earlier there was one more committee which was set up by Niti Aayog, which studied and gave recommendations to restructure Indian Railways, revamp Indian Railways. Bibek Debra committee was set up to study and recommend changes, revamping of Indian Railways. That is also second very important contribution. Third one, they also set up one more committee, Tajamul Haq committee. Tajamul Haq, right? Tajamul Haq is the name of an expert, and he passed away a couple of years ago. He actually passed away. Tajamul Haq is an expert in land reforms, and Tajamul Haq committee was set up to finalize a model land leasing act for the states. Now, what is this idea of a land leasing act? What is this concept of land leasing act? Land leasing simply means, let's assume you have 2 acres, or let's say 2 hectares of land. Okay, you have 2 hectares of land and you get selected to IAS cadre. Now, obviously, many of you, because you are IAS officers now, You will not go back to your villages and start cultivating, which means you have land, agriculture land, by the way, but you're not able to utilize the land. So generally what happens in India, the owners of the land will give it on lease basis, to other cultivators. Now, the concern we have faced is most of these leases which are entered upon is verbal in nature. All of you are able to understand this? These leases, that is, imagine you own the land, I'm a farmer, you will lease out the land to me for a certain number of years. There is no written contract, there is no written agreement between you and me. It is basically in the form of a verbal agreement. Now, don't you think whenever the contracts or agreements are verbal in nature, there will be issues regarding these contracts? In the sense, let's say after 1 year, after let's say 18 months, he will say that I was supposed to give you a payment of X rupees. But how do I ensure that it is the right amount? What if you're saying more than what we had agreed to? You will simply say, no, I remember I told you X rupees. I will simply say, no, sir, you had agreed to Y rupees, which is much lesser than X rupees. So if there is any dispute, regarding the provisions or let's say the contract itself, because the contract is verbal in nature, it becomes very difficult to resolve these kinds of disputes. So in order to address this issue of the verbal contracts, which are generally the norm, which are generally practiced in rural India, the government of India, the Niti Aayog had set up Tajamul Haq Committee. Tajamul Haq Committee has recommended that every state government should have a land leasing act. According to the proposal, when the land leasing acts are implemented by the states, whenever the land is given on lease, there will be a document. There will be a written contract, not verbal contract. There will be a written contract, right? So Tajamul Haq Committee has recommended Land Leasing Act for the states. Next one, competitive federalism, right, is being promoted by this Niti Aayog. Next, it has been asked by the government to look into and recommend regarding the coverage under National Food Security Act. If you remember, under NFSA, is it okay if I say today we are covering 67% of India's population? Yes or no? Participate. 613. I want you people to participate. Wake up now. Right? So, in case of India, we are covering 67%. 67% of India's population, 2011 population is covered under NFSA. So, Government of India has asked Niti Aayog to look into the population coverage, because there is a concern that the population that we are covering is not sufficient, is not appropriate. Over a period of time, please think of it. If 67% of India's population, which is 2011 population, is covered under NFSA, don't you think the coverage, because of this kind of coverage, we would have not covered certain people who would actually require food security now? And the other concern is also we have covered some of the population which doesn't require food security. So there can be omission and commission errors. At certain people who require food security, these are not covered. And those who do not need food security, these are covered. So there are certain concerns regarding the coverage of population under NFSA. Niti Aayog has been asked to study this and give recommendation to the government. Interministerial committee also has been set up to monitor setting up of urea plants in India. Urea plants in India, right? The Government of India has proposed urea plants at Talcher and Gorakhpur, Sindri, Ramagundam, Barauni, etc. So there are certain places where urea plants have been proposed to be set up, and the objective is very simple. Some of you will say, sir, why are we setting up urea plants? Urea is imported into India. So we want to reduce the import dependence. So we want we are promoting more and more production of urea in the domestic market. A task force has been constituted under the chairmanship of Dr. Ramesh Chand. Mr. Ramesh Chand, very well known expert in agriculture sector, to study, right, and provide long-term solution for sugarcane sector. And basically, in case of sugarcane, lot of volatility is there in terms of revenues or in terms of market prices, in terms of production, in terms of supply, in terms of exports, etc. So lot of uncertainty, lot of volatility is there in sugarcane sector. So government wants the committee to study and give recommendations how to stabilize the sector. Next one, Niti Aayog also has constituted a committee which was set up by Justice A.K. Sikri, former justice in Supreme Court of India. Justice A.K. Sikri committee has been set up to study and recommend online dispute resolution. Online dispute resolution, ODR. What is the side of online dispute resolution? Many of the times you must have seen, if there is a commercial dispute in India, commercial dispute means between two suppliers, between two companies, traders and a company, supplier and a company, etc. So whenever these kind of commercial disputes arise, it takes a very long time period to go through the judiciary, right? And now what can be done is, can we make the whole process online? Can we resolve these disputes online? So online dispute resolution, there was this committee to study as well as recommend how can we implement online dispute resolution in India. So these are some of the recommendations which have been given by Niti Aayog so far. And again, please understand, these are some of them. These are not, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a representative list. I've given around 10 types of recommendations, or how Niti Aayog has played a role in around 10 areas. As far as I'm concerned, if a descriptive question is asked to, let's say, to suggest how Niti Aayog is important, or in what areas Niti Aayog has given recommendations, as far as I'm concerned, this will cross more than 250 words. But again, my recommendation to all of you is, as we keep on going, right? So January, February, March, April, again and again, more recommendations of Niti Aayog will keep on popping up. So what you need to do is take up and keep on adding all of them. Okay, right? So these are some of the recommendations which have been provided by Niti Aayog. Now, what has been the concern regarding the functioning of Niti Aayog? What has been the problem regarding the functioning of Niti Aayog? Criticism. Point number one, the Niti Aayog is an executive authority. It is not a constitutional authority. It is an executive authority. Now you tell me, polity classes, polity batch is over for you. I know that. For those, at least for those whom it is over, right? Except those who have joined very recently. You tell me, if it is an executive authority, don't you think accountability part is missing for it? Yes or no? If it is a constitutional authority, there is always a checks and balances system. Checks and balances system that we have. For example, who shall be appointed as a Supreme Court of India's judge? There are certain checks and balances. How Chief Election Commissioner is supposed to be appointed? There are checks and balances. What is the role of Election Commission of India? Constitution of India has checks and balances. But if there is an executive authority, whom do you think, will be, or who do you think will be holding them accountable? Government of India. Who is appointing them? Government of India. Who is holding them accountable? Government of India. So don't you think there is again, it's a concern, by the way, right? Don't say, sir, why are you talking like this, etc. There's a concern which is basically, if executive is responsible, if government is responsible for the appointment, don't you think they will appoint people who will support their viewpoint? Who will be basically in line with the viewpoints of Government of India, who will basically agree to what are the policies of Government of India. Is there a concern or not? Of course, yes. Right. So accountability part, there is a concern over accountability part. Niti Aayog being such an important organization, there is no accountability with Parliament, because Parliament has representation of all the parties. Rather, it is accountable only with Government of India. That is the first one. First concern, right? Again, if you want to understand a better way, sir, how can you say like this, etc., let me know. Don't you think the same criticism is always given or always attested to Enforcement Directorate as well as CBI? Correct or not? The same argument is put forward in regards to criticism against the functioning of CBI, criticism against the functioning of Enforcement Directorate. That is, these are executive authority. These come under the executive authorities. Okay, so it is not a constitutional body, so it is not accountable to Parliament. it does not have a role or any importance in certain important policies which are implemented by the government. For example, GST. Right, GST is a very important reform implemented by the government. Right, very important reform. What is the role of Niti Aayog under GST? Does it play any recommendation role in that? Absolutely no. Niti Aayog does not play any role in certain important policies of the government. So government says it is a national institution. It's a national institution, right, which will help us in implementing a lot of policies, important policies. Strategic inputs are provided, etc. But in certain important policies, Niti Aayog does not play any role. Next one, it does not influence any kind of investment. What do you mean by this? Earlier planning commission, in order to implement 5-year plans, would allocate finances to states. Because under plans, 5-year plans, multiple infrastructure projects were proposed. So through central government, finances were allocated to states for implementation of 5-year plans. So don't you think when, let's say, under 5-year plan, lot of infrastructure is promoted, it will also promote lot of private sector investment? Correct? This is my 23rd class. If government, because of, let's say, 5-year plans prepared by the planning commission, if government will allocate lot of funding to the states for development of infrastructure, will it not attract private sector investment? And of course, yes, it will attract lot of private sector investment. For example, let's say highways are constructed. Highways are constructed. Now, please tell me, if highways are constructed, will it not attract industries, right, which are going to be set up along the lines of highways only? All of you will agree with me? Anybody has a doubt? Anybody has a problem? Please do let me know. If anybody is not able to understand even now, please do let me know. Right? I'll give a very simple example. All of you heard of Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. Current affairs example I'm taking. Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. Right? One of the biggest infrastructure projects which is being implemented by the government now. What is one of the outcomes of Delhi-Mumbai Expressway? We are expecting, because Delhi and Mumbai would be connected with a very long and high quality infrastructure now. Long means in terms of length. Length of this expressway is very high. So because this high quality infrastructure is going to connect two industrial centers like this, along the line, we are expecting emergence of industries. Because the transportation will become easier now along the line of this expressway, along this length of expressway. We are expecting lot of investment in the form of industries from the private sector. So again, I'll come back to the same argument. The government, whenever they will promote investments, right, whenever they will invest in infrastructure, we expect a private sector investment as well. It does not influence any kind of investment, because Niti Aayog does not prepare 5-year plans. Niti Aayog is not responsible for the implementation of 5-year plans. So earlier, under planning commission, they would influence lot of investments. Niti Aayog does not influence investments in India. And finally, one of the objective of Niti Aayog was the argument of ensuring all the sections of the society will get welfare. Certain sections of the society are being left out of economic growth. Right? So Niti Aayog, one of the objectives was to say that we will bring in all these sections of the society and will provide or will ensure that benefits of growth will reach to sections of the society. But criticism against Niti Aayog has been that even though it has been set up, it's been more than 7 years since the establishment of Niti Aayog, inequality in India, I repeat, inequality. Right? Don't say, sir, I read this much in newspaper, that in newspaper. Inequality in India has not reduced. Even today, inequality is existing in case of India. Sir, what kind of inequality you're talking about? Income inequality. Right? Everybody will agree? Wealth inequality. Gender income inequality. Right? Even today in case of India, it is there. And in fact, many of the experts argue that because of pandemic, income inequality has increased. Because of pandemic, wealth inequality has increased. Gender inequality has increased. So these are some of the criticisms against the functioning of Niti Aayog. Done? Anybody has got any kind of a doubt regarding what I've discussed, please do let me know. This is the end of the planning chapter. We will start another chapter, that is basic. I'll come back to questions later. Questions are there on planning. We'll discuss that today also. Don't worry. Some of the infrastructure parts, if you remember earlier, infrastructure parts, some of the parts of infrastructure is left out. We'll discuss infrastructure, then we'll come back to questions. Please do let me know if anybody has got any kind of a doubt regarding what we are discussing. I'll address it. Otherwise, I'll go forward. Let me know. Any doubts? Arey Baba, participate. Most of you have gone dormant. Right, sir? Is it last class? No, my dear, I've told you this already. This was supposed to be my last class. I'll repeat, this was supposed to be my last class. If we had gone according to the schedule, this was supposed to be the 24th lecture. Because certain technical issues arose yesterday, that class, one additional class, I'll take it up on Saturday. Whatever is left out of syllabus, I'll cover it on Saturday. Please don't worry. Okay. Anybody else has any other questions? Sir, is the notes sufficient? Is the PPT sufficient? I'll repeat it. I've told this multiple times. Again, I'll repeat it. I don't mind repeating this, right? Understand this. Whatever we are discussing in the classroom, read that from a textbook or in a book. Sir, I don't have book. Don't worry. Sir, should I pay for a book, etc.? Don't worry. I've given you the references from Tamil Nadu board as well as NCERT books. Right? Let me know. All of you are reading at least those references. And if you have read those references, you will also know that, okay, I'm getting, right, as per UPSC, I'm getting sufficient knowledge from NCERT books as well as Tamil Nadu board books. Right? Any one of them you want to choose, it is entirely up to you. Entirely up to you. Okay. Apart from that, we are also giving additional reading material. Please use that also. Plus, I'm giving you weekly current affairs. Right? For the last 5 weeks, I've given you current affairs. Right? 20 articles, 15 articles, 10 articles, 19 articles. Right? So in the last 5 weeks itself, I'm pretty sure you'd have collected around, right, let's say 80 plus articles from current affairs on all the topics which you have covered, of course. So I hope you understand. Do not stick to only PPT. That's a wrong strategy. Do not stick to only PPT. It's a wrong strategy. Why? UPSC has a tendency of picking up difficult questions from current affairs. Current affairs, they'll pick up very, very difficult questions like this. So I would strongly recommend to you that read current affairs, read what is given in ARM, read NCERT references, right, or let's say Tamil Nadu board references that I've given to you, and basically use the PPT to revise all of it. So this would be my strategy, recommendation to you, advice to you. And because it's an advice, it's a recommendation, it is entirely up to you whether you want to follow this or not. Right? Because it's a recommendation. Recommendation by nature are not mandatory. Recommendation by nature are not mandatory. It is entirely up to you whether you want to listen to these recommendations or not. Okay. Now, let me go back to the railways. Right? Let me go back to the railways. If you remember, just let me jog your mind. Some of you would have forgotten it. And some of you would have missed the class last week. Suddenly you will come today and say, sir, you're skipping infrastructure. No. What we did last week was we started with infrastructure. Correct? After investment model, right? We started with infrastructure. In infrastructure, we started with the power sector, electricity, power sector. We started with the electricity or power sector. We discussed what is basically the 3-step process in electricity, production, transmission, and then distribution, etc. Then we discussed what are the issues in the electricity sector. Then we discussed what are the reforms, some of the important reforms in the electricity sector implemented by the government in the last couple of years. Then we started discussing railways. Another infrastructure is railways. We started discussing railways. In railways, what we discussed was, right, what is basically the important points. India has one of the largest railway network in the world. That was one point. In India, the railways is a part of departmental undertaking or ministerial undertaking. That is, Government of India through a ministry runs this enterprises of railways, runs this right a concept of railways in India. Third point was there are two components in railways. Railways is divided into two parts. Right? What are the two parts? One is basically the passenger segment, passenger, that is you traveling, I traveling through railways. Second one is a freight segment. Freight means goods, transportation of material, transportation of goods using Indian Railways. Right? So these were the important points. After that, we discussed concerns. We discussed issues related to railways in India. Point number one, I said, in railways, operating ratio is very high. Operating ratio is very high. Now, what do you mean by operating ratio? How much is your expenditure to generate revenue? Expenditure divided by revenue is called as operating ratio. If you remember, the number that I gave you was, in the last 10 years, operating ratio has reached around 98.4%, which means to generate a revenue of 100 rupees, we are spending 98 rupees. And thereafter, right, I told you this also, operating ratio should be decreasing, operating ratio should not be increasing, because higher the operating ratio means you are spending more money to generate revenue. Right? On the other side, if you're spending lesser money to generate same amount of revenue, obviously your expenses are efficient. So OR is higher. Why OR is higher? Government provides a lot of subsidies, implicit subsidies in railways. Correct? Do you remember that? Government provides, right? Government provides a lot of railway subsidies, right? Cross subsidization is done. Freight transportation in railways has come down. Most of the freight transportation today is done through roadways, right? Etc. etc. So those are some of the issues that we have discussed. Now, in connection to this, before I forget, because there is a linkage, right? I suddenly realized there is a linkage in today's Hindu newspaper, the daily convention, right? The daily exercise that we are doing in today's Hindu newspaper. What are the articles I want you people to read? Four articles, correct. Four articles precisely. One is regarding railways. Go to the business page. There is an article on railways, right? Right side, bottom part, right bottom corner. There is an article on railways. Article is simple. Railways has found out that there are certain routes in India, certain routes where lot of freight transportation does not happen. Right? The capacity is there, railways are there, the coaches are there, etc. Capacity is there, but the routes are not being completely utilized for freight transportation. So the Ministry of Railways very recently has announced that if we are going to use these routes for transportation of certain products, certain goods, 20% rebate will be provided. 20% rebate will be provided. Right? So again, please read that article. Right? Think of it, sir. How is this article important? Very simple question to you. If you are manufacturing a car, think of it. If you are manufacturing a car, rather than transporting cars mainly through road mode of a transportation, now if you use the railways, if 20% rebate means 20% of the charges will be given back to you. Don't you think you'll prefer to move your cars using railways now? And if you start moving your cars, transporting your cars to destination using railways, what will happen to freight transportation through railways? Freight transportation through railways will improve. Can government utilize the capacity more and more, generate more revenues? Of course, answer is yes. So that is a connection. That is a connection I'm trying to establish here. Please read that article. It is there in Hindu newspaper only. Hindu newspaper only it was there. Some of you are asking, sir, yesterday's newspaper, important articles you have not given. My dear, yesterday there was no Hindu publication. I don't know how many of you have read yesterday's Hindu, right? Yesterday's Hindu, there was no publication of Hindu newspaper. The paper was not published because of the Makar Sankranti. Second article I want you people to read is about PVR. PVR, right? The distribution chain, or let's say the theater chain that you generally come across, PVR. There is a central page, sorry, not central, explained page. There is an explained page article on PVR. Again, don't read how many movies they are promoting, which right director is alleging right, let's say a certain wrong policy of PVR, right, etc., etc. Don't read that. What is important? There is a discussion regarding Competition Commission of India. Read that. There's a discussion in the last paragraph, to be very precise. In the last paragraph, there is there is an article regarding Competition Commission. I'm sorry, there is a discussion regarding Competition Commission of India, and CCI is very often there in the newspaper. Please be very, very careful. Okay. The third article I want you people to read is regarding RBI committee recommendations for state guarantees. There is an article, very small article, but I wish Hindu had given a bigger article for that. There was a committee task force which was set up by RBI regarding state guarantees. State guarantees are nothing but whenever any borrowings are done, certain borrowings which are done by the state government agencies, state government authorities, state government will give guarantees for that. So there is a committee recommendation regarding the state guarantees, again in business page. Please read that. And the fourth one, which has been there in the newspaper for multiple weeks now, Kabil. Earlier, I asked you to read regarding Kabil, correct? Couple of days ago, I think around 2 weeks ago, I said there is an article regarding Kabil in Hindu newspaper. Please read it, I said. Why? Kabil was basically trying to invest and purchase certain rights of mining lithium in one of the countries. And that agreement has gone through. Kabil now has invested hundreds of crores of rupees, and they will be mining and utilizing lithium in Argentina. Right, 5 of the mines have been allocated exclusive rights to mine lithium in 5 of the mines in Argentina has been given to Kabil now. Right, please read that. In the same article, you will also come to know, which I've already mentioned, lithium import dependence is 100% in India. Lithium is used in multiple, let's say industries. We require more and more production supply of it. In India, we do not have, as of now, we do not have commercial supply of it, etc., etc. So these are the 4 articles I want you people to read from Hindu newspaper today. Okay, come back to railways. Now. What are the reforms which have been taken up by the government? What kind of reforms have been undertaken by the government to promote railway sector in India? Point number 1, bullet train project. Right? Very, very famous now, bullet train project. To be very precise, bullet train project, when it was announced, was supposed to start operating by now. We expected, when we announced this, we expected that the bullet train would be operational by 2023, but even today it is not operational. Why? Lot of issues with the land acquisition. Right? Pandemic delayed it, land acquisition delayed it, availability of labor delayed it, etc. So argument is simple here. What are the benefits? With this kind of a project we are expecting? Point number 1. This is one project wherein we are going to import technology. This is the kind of technology which is going to be used for the first time ever in India. So any adoption of this kind of a new technology which will improve transportation, which will improve, let's say the quality of services, is always welcome. It is always accepted. So first one, it is introduction of a new technology. Second one, once this bullet train will start operating between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, the time taken for transportation is expected to come down. As per government documents, the time taken to travel between these 2 cities, both are industrial cities by the way, time taken to travel will come down from 8 hours to 2 hours. From 8 hours, it will be cut down to 2 hours. So time of commutation will come down, which is an advantage for the passengers or customers. Point number 3, if these kind of projects, high-speed projects which will reduce the commutation time are going to be implemented by the government, the transportation on the road, that is, how many people will use a road as a mode of transportation, will come down. Some of the passengers, rather than using road as a mode of transportation, will get shifted to these railway projects. Railway projects will be preferred rather than traveling on the road. So it will decongest a road mode of a transportation. Decongest means reduce the congestion, reduce the number of people, reduce the number of vehicles on the road. So it will decongest the road mode of a transportation. And apart from this, this will also reduce the chances of migration by the people. These kind of projects will reduce the chances of migration by the people. So what is the meaning of it? Right? Imagine this. You are living in one city, right? You are living in one city, or let's say one region in a city, in this corner, and your office is there in the other corner. The traveling time is very high, right? On day-to-day basis, imagine you are forced to travel 1 hour, 2 hours, etc. Rather than spending so much of time on the road, what you will decide to is migrate from this region to this region. Very simple, right? You will decide, rather than traveling, right, every day, right, 2 hours to go to office, 2 hours to come back from office. What makes more sense now is to relocate from this region to this region. But now imagine this, a textile unit is set up right outside Mumbai, and there is a bullet train project, right? There is a bullet train railway station very nearby to a textile unit. And there is a manufacturing unit set up outside Ahmedabad, and it is basically set up very nearby to a railway station, that is a bullet train station. So think of it now, because you can quickly travel now because of this bullet train project, because you can quickly travel, time consumption for traveling will reduce. Don't you think the chances of migration will also start reducing? Correct? Chances of migration will also start reducing. People, rather than shifting from outside the city into the city, they will stay outside the city itself because they can easily travel into the city now. And what about industries? Rather than getting located within the city only, can they start relocating outside the cities along the railway route now? Right? Does it make sense to all of you? Please do let me know. So chances of migration into the cities will start coming down. Right? So these are the benefits. These are the benefits associated with the bullet train project. Having said so, what are the concerns? What are the issues of this model? What are the concerns related to this model? The biggest concern has been, once the railway will start operating, what will be the ticket price? What will be the ticket price? Because the concern is that if the ticket price is very high, passengers will not prefer to travel in this. If ticket price is very less, we have invested more than 1 lakh crore rupees, will not be able to recover our money. So concern is what will be the pricing of the services? That is the point number one. Point number two, cost of the project. Only for one project, we are spending more than 1 lakh crore rupees. Only for one project, we are spending more than 1 lakh crore rupees. Rather than spending more than 1 lakh crore on one project, can we use this amount of money to develop, maintain multiple railway projects in India? Of course, answer is yes. Right? So concern is one, cost of the project is very, very high, more than 1 lakh crore rupees. Second, cost of the service, right? Pricing of the service is very tricky here. Third one is land acquisition. Land acquisition has been the biggest concern regarding development of infrastructure projects, including bullet train project. We have completed acquisition of the land. Whatever land was required for this project, this year we have completed acquisition of the land that was required. Right? That is much later than the year when we are supposed to start the operations. We have completed the acquisition of the land. So land acquisition has been a very, very big issue for all the infrastructure projects in India, including bullet train project. Now, second reform, merger with union budget. Earlier, I told you this earlier also. When I was discussing union budget, I've told you this. Earlier, the government used to announce a separate railway budget and a separate union budget. Right? Initially, government would announce a railway budget, and after 2 to 3 days of presentation of railway budget, government would announce a union budget. We have discontinued this from 2016 and 2017. We have discontinued it. And we have brought this railway budget, and today we announce it as a part of union budget only. We announce railway budget as a part of union budget, not separately, unlike earlier. Now, why? What has been the issue here? Right? Why has the government of India taken this step? Point number one, Having a separate railway budget is not a constitutional requirement. I'll repeat the statement. Having a separate railway budget is not a constitutional requirement. Constitution simply says under Article 112, annually once, the government has to present annual financial statement. That's it. Once in a year, government has to present annual financial statement. Now, whether is there a condition that a railway budget has to be separate, union budget has to be separate? No conditions are there. So that is the reason government said it's not a constitutional requirement. Let's put it as a part of union budget. Second, Ministry of Finance is allocating funding for roadway projects, not railway, roadway projects. It is allocating funds for airport projects. It is allocating funds for port projects, etc. And simultaneously, you have Ministry of Railways, which is taking care of only railway projects. So government felt, what is the need? Why should we have two different authorities taking care of different projects now? Let's have only one authority, that is a Ministry of Finance, to take care and allocate funds for all the projects, infrastructure projects. Third one is the size of railway budget. How much money is spent, how much money is raised under railway budget. Over a period of time, it has been reducing. It has been reducing as a percentage of union budget. That is, let's say union budget is 10 lakh crore rupee. Size of railway budget compared to 10 lakh crore rupee, right, as a percentage has been shrinking. So importance of railway budget has been shrinking over a period of time. Hence we said, let's merge it. Right, and one more concern that was raised by Government of India regarding having a separate railway budget was, many of the times the announcement of the projects under the railway budgets, I repeat, many of the times the announcements under railway budgets are done just to please people. These are populist measures. These are not done, take into consideration the benefits as well as the expenditures. So that is the reason government said, let's streamline the whole process. Let's include the railway budget as a part of union budget itself. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why we have merged railway budget with union budget. Today we have only one budget, no separate railway budget. Next, increasing safety. In order to increase the safety of railways, what kind of reforms have been implemented? For example, there is an initiative of Government of India, Setu Bharatam project. Right, Setu Bharatam project. Now, what is the Setu Bharatam project? Please do let me know. Multiple times have you come across newspaper articles where they will say, at railway crossings there has been accident between a railway and a bus? Have you come across this or not? At railway crossing means what? Road is there and right, a railway line is crossing the road. Simple, right? A road is there and there is a railway line which is cutting the road like this. This is called as a railway crossing. And many of the times, because there is no manned power, that is, there is no person to monitor when the railway is crossing like this, there are accidents which are taking place. So we have implemented an initiative called as Setu Bharatam project. Under Setu Bharatam project, Government of India wants to eliminate all the railway crossings. How can we eliminate railway crossings? Whenever a railway line is there, either construct an overhead bridge or underhead bridge. That's it. Construct an overhead bridge or underhead bridge. Ensure that there is no physically there is no two lines crossing each other. That is, the railway line as well as the road line will not cross each other physically. Construct an overhead bridge or an underpassing so that there is no crossing of these two lines and the chances of accidents automatically will come down. In addition to this, all of you have come across Kavach system. Right? You may not find it in the books, you may not find it anywhere, you will find it in the current affairs. Please read that. Kavach system is basically a system where two trains which are going to cross like this or nearing each other, through the technology will communicate with each other and ensure that both of them will not be involved in accidents. And that kind of a Kavach system also is being proposed now for all the railway lines in India. So we are also improving safety. We are also improving safety in railways. Private sector operating trains. right? Private sector operating trains now, right? What do you mean by private sector operating trains? Please understand this. Until very recently, very recently, private sector, the railway operations were controlled, right? Railway operations were controlled only by the government, right? The railways are operated only by the government. That is, the Ministry of Railways would simply operate the railways, right? Operate means scheduling, ensuring that, right, ensuring that railways, right, will take passengers, will take freight, etc. Everything is done by government of India, that is through Ministry of Railways. Now government says we will identify some of the routes. I repeat, now government says we will identify some of the routes, and these routes, or in these routes, rather than only government operating the train, even the private sector can start operating the trains. Very simple. Rather than only government operating the trains here, the private sector can come in, they can start operating these particular trains. That is, private sector entry has been allowed into the railways now. That is allowed in the railways. Now, what is the advantage? Why government is doing this? What is the advantage? Point number one. If private sector wants to operate trains, they will have to take trains on lease basis. They will have to take engine on lease basis, which means, can I say private sector is investing money in railways. Anybody has a problem with this statement? I'll repeat it again. If private sector, imagine you're a private sector company, you want to operate this railway route, which means you will have to have railway engine, you will have to have railway, right, coaches, etc., which means you will have to invest and take it on lease, purchase, etc. So now, through this policy, government is promoting private sector investment in railways. Point number one. If private sector will invest in railways, can I also infer and say the pressure on government of India to invest in railways will be lesser? All of you okay with this? Right? Pressure on government of India to invest in railways would be lesser. So that is a point number two. Point number three, if private sector will invest and start providing services, don't you think the quality of services will improve? Don't you think the quality of services will start improving now? Right? That is the third advantage. Fourth advantage, if you are a passenger in railways, you would prefer on time arrival of railway, on time departure of railways, etc. Now, why this is important? I hope you understand, not related to railways, but related to civil aviation. Right? All of you have seen what will happen if there is no on time departure of, right, let's say certain aeroplanes. If there's a huge delay, what will happen? How people will behave? All of you have seen it. Again, don't get into the ethical part of it. Don't discuss ethics part of it. Now focus on the discussion. So on time arrival, on time departure is also important. So private sector says, if I start providing services, I'll be very punctual. Right? I'll ensure that there is on time departure, on time, right, arrival of railways, etc. So as a passenger, that is also a benefit. So understand this. Government of India says by allowing the private sector to operate trains in India, it is a win-win-win. It's a win-win and win for the government, for the private sector, and for the passengers. For the government, because government is not investing money, government is allowing the private sector to invest money. And more importantly, when private sector will start operating trains, they will earn revenue. They want to earn profit. That is the reason they are operating. Part of the revenue, they will have to give it to government now, because government is allowing them to use the infrastructure. Part of the revenue, they will have to share it with government. So government says, it's a win for me. It's a win for the private sector. And lastly, it is a win for even the passengers. Right? So these are some of the benefits associated with this policy of government of India to allow private sector to operate trains in India. Having said so, are there any concerns? Are there any problems related to this policy? Point number one, lot of private sector players are not interested in this policy. I'll repeat the statement. Lot of private sector players are not interested in this policy. Why? they feel that the investment requirements are very, very high. Investment requirements in this policy, if I want to operate trains, I will have to invest huge amount of money. That's a concern for me. Second one, some of the private players are worried about the routes, the railway routes which have been identified, and right, which are allowed for the private sector participation. They are arguing that we don't think that these routes we will be able to generate lot of revenues. Very simple. They are arguing these routes we will not be able to generate lot of revenues. Right. So there are also certain concerns regarding private sector participation. Another concern is, if private sector will start participating, they will provide quality services. No doubt, they will provide quality services. Then what about the cost? What about the tariff? Because the government says, if a private sector company is operating the train, they will decide the tariff. They will decide the rate. So concern is that what if private sector will increase the tariff, which might become unaffordable for a lot of population, large number of people in India. So these are some of the concerns which have been raised against private sector participating in operation or in operating railway routes in India. Right. So these are some of the reforms that have been undertaken. Next reform, the National Rail Plan 2030. National Rail Plan 2030. What are the provisions under National Rail Plan 2030? Point number one, we want to increase the modal share of railways to 45% from 27%. When the plan was proposed in 2020, railways accounted for 27% of total freight transportation in India. According to this plan, we want to increase it to 45% by 2030. That is the first provision. Second provision, we want to ensure railways will become net zero emitter by 2030. We want to ensure that railways will become net zero emitter by 2030. Net zero emitter means the total emissions done by railways will become zero. Right? Net zero emitter by 2030. Right? Have you come across this argument of Government of India? We want to make India a net zero emitter by 2070. India, not railways. Right? Please do let me know. Government of India set up a target of making India a net zero emission by 2070. That was announced by government in Glasgow conference of parties, Glasgow conference. And in order to achieve that, government is promoting lot of reforms. For example, in railways only. In railways, rather than burning coal, we want to shift to, let's say, the electricity which is renewable in nature. Right, lot of this electricity, let's say solar energy capacity is being installed by railways now, so that they will be able to use this electricity rather than using the thermal energy as such. Right, so net zero emitter by 2030. We will create capacity. Right, over a period of time, population will increase. Demand for railways will also keep on increasing. So we'll create capacity much ahead. We'll create sufficient capacity by 2030, which can cater to the rising demand till 2050. For successful implementation of the National Rail Plan, we'll seek the assistance of private sector, we'll seek the assistance of public sector undertakings, we'll seek the assistance and participation of the state governments as well. So these are some of the very important provisions of National Rail Plan 2030. We are implementing National Rail Plan 2030 now. Done. So these are certain important points regarding railway reforms. Can we go forward now? Anybody has any concern regarding what I've discussed so far? Please do let me know. Can we go forward? Only two people have answered. Only two people have answered. I want answer from at least some more people. Okay, great. Roads sector. Next one is roads sector. Right, again, please do let me know. Anybody wants me to define what is a road? So tell me the definition of a road. A road is a mode of a transportation. It's an infrastructure which can be used as a mode of a transportation. Okay. Now again, some of you are asking what is infrastructure? Good question. I'll answer it. Some of you are asking, sir, what do you mean by infrastructure? Because if UPSC, let's say somewhere will ask you what is infrastructure, most of you will simply say infrastructure is road, infrastructure is railways, What do you mean by infrastructure? Infrastructure is the one which will provide, which will facilitate, which will provide services for promotion of growth and development. Infrastructure is nothing but it is one which is developed, which will facilitate growth and development. For example, a road is an infrastructure. Can we use a road to promote growth and development in India? Right? Hospitals is an infrastructure. Can we use Can we use hospitals to promote development in India? Manufacturing is infrastructure. Can we use manufacturing to promote growth in India? Of course, yes. So I hope you understand this. I hope you understand infrastructure will facilitate services using which we can promote growth and development. And whenever you talk about infrastructure, you can divide infrastructure into three parts. You can divide infrastructure into three parts. One is called as economic infrastructure. Economic infrastructure, such as ports. Ports is the economic infrastructure, right? What about the expressways? Economic infrastructure, right? So there is economic infrastructure. Then there is the social infrastructure also, schools, hospitals, right? All the housing, etc. This is social infrastructure. Third one is a new type and especially applicable to India: digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure. Now, please tell me, are you coming across the term digital infrastructure very often in the context of India? Let me see. Current affairs. Current affairs. Are you coming across the term digital infrastructure in the context of India? If you ask me, sir, any example of digital infrastructure? UPI. UPI. Right? All of you have used UPI? All of you have heard of UPI? Anybody in the classroom who says, sir, what is this UPI? I've never heard of it. What about Aadhaar? Let me see. What about Aadhaar? Can we say Aadhaar is also a digital infrastructure? So please understand this very carefully. Please understand this very carefully. Government of India, very often you will come across this in the newspaper. Government, in order to improve relations with other countries, is offering its digital infrastructure to other countries. Yes or no? Have you heard of this? Have you come across this statement in the newspaper? Government, in order to improve its relations with other countries, is offering its digital infrastructure to other countries. That is, Government of India saying, you want UPI technology? We will give it to you. We will give it to you. You want to use it in your country? Use it. Adopt it and use it. You want Aadhaar infrastructure, right? The technology related to that, we will tell you how to develop Aadhaar, right? How to use Aadhaar, we will tell you. You want to use it, use it. So the diplomacy, right? It will improve diplomatic relations between countries, right? So I hope you understand digital infrastructure. Government of India is promoting lot of development under the digital infrastructure itself, right? So one is economic infrastructure, second one is social infrastructure, third one is digital infrastructure. Now come back to the discussion. Roads again, right? Do not worry about some of you are asking, sir, where is the picture from, etc., etc. Don't worry, right? UPSC is not going to give you this picture and ask you, right, from where this particular picture has been taken. That is out of the scope of UPSC. Now let me focus on the issues in the road sector here. If you want to understand, please understand, in case of India, road sector, especially post independence, has been given very high importance. The road sector has been given very, very high importance, especially post independence. Compared to development of railway infrastructure, government has promoted a lot of developments under the road infrastructure itself. And to promote road development, government set up Ministry of Roadways. Remember this, Ministry of Roadways. At the central level, at the union level, we have one ministry, Ministry of Roadways. Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways. You will come across MORTH. Correct? Very often in the newspaper, you will come across acronym MORTH, Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways. Mr. Nitin Gadkari is the minister for MORTH now. So the government of India set up MORTH to promote development of roads, or to have policies and promote road sector in India. Next point, Who is responsible for construction of roadways in India? Is it only government which will develop roadways in India? Absolutely no. Government along with private sector. Government along with private sector. Right? Government is also developing the roadways infrastructure in India. The private sector is also involved in development of roadways infrastructure in India. For example, right? Do you remember the concept of build, operate, transfer, hybrid annuity model that we have discussed last week? So, a lot of road infrastructure is being developed under the model of a BOT, right? Or basically under the model of PPP in India. Okay, so these are certain important points, basic points regarding roadways. And if you want to know other points, in India, we have more than 60 lakh kilometer length of road network. I'll repeat the statement. In India, we have, I think the picture is there somewhere here. We have more than 60 lakh kilometer of road network in India. More than 60 lakh kilometer. Do not by heart this, because from 1 year to next year, the data will change. From 1 year to next year, the data will change. Then what you should remember? What you should remember? Remember the next point. Next point is important. Out of more than 60 lakh kilometers, above 60 lakh kilometers of road network, most of it is other roads. Most of it is other roads. That is somewhere around 95% of the road network is other roads. The state highways as well as national highways hardly account around 5%. The state highways as well as national highways hardly account for around 5% of total road networks in India. Other roads. Now, before you start asking, sir, what do you mean by other roads? The roads which are constructed in villages, roads which are constructed to connect villages, the municipality roads, that is the roads which are there in the cities, talukas, etc. So the length of other roads in case of India is more than 95%, whereas the state highways as well as the national highways length is below 5% in India. Now, why is this important? Why is this logic important? Why is this data important? Is there any connection? Please do let me know. Point number one, all of you will agree if I say most of the freight transportation in India is done through roadways. Point number one, most of the freight transportation is done through roadways. Point number two, when you transport a freight in India, you would prefer highways. Correct? You would prefer highways. You will not prefer village roads. You will prefer highways for freighter transportation. Third one, if highways account for only 5%, less than 5% of total road network in India, don't you think there is a need for us to construct more and more highways in India? Correct? All of you will agree? Most of the freight transportation is done through highways, which means we need to develop lot of highways in India. And more importantly, let me add one more point here. In order to transport, make it easier, reduce the time consumption, increase the average speed, is it okay if I say we should have more of 4-lane national highways? We should have more of 6-lane national highways. We should have more of 8-lane highways. All of you will agree? Anybody has a problem, please do let me know. Right? If you want to transport more, you want to reduce the cost of transportation, you want to reduce the time taken for transportation. For that, we should have more and more of 4-lane national highways, 6-lane national highways, 8-lane highways, etc. So that the time taken will automatically come down. Consumption of fuel will also come down. Right? That is one more concern here. Most of the highways that we have in India are either a 2-lane or 4-lane. Right? These are either 2-lane or 4-lane. And when the number of lanes are very lesser like this, time taken for transportation will also be increasing. Right? So this is one more point. Please remember this. Now, what are the issues associated with the road sector in India? First one, land acquisition is very difficult. Remember this, right? Land acquisition as a problem in all the infrastructure, physical, social infrastructure projects in India. Simply write it, especially in economic infrastructure. One issue that you will have to write by default is land acquisition. Land acquisition is a problem. Second one, out of the total length of road network, Out of total length of road network, hardly around 3% is national highway. Hardly around 2% is state highways. So the highway network in India is very, very less. Right? So national highways length should be increased, proportion should also be increased. And within this highway argument itself, we can also say that the total length of 4-lane highways, 6-lane highways, 8-lane highways are also very, very less. We should work on that as well. Right? Cost of transportation is also very high. Cost of transportation is also very high. Now, some of you are asking, sir, how 6-lane or 8-lane will help us in transporting? My dear, please tell me, have you seen this happening? If you have traveled in a highway, please do let me know. If it is, let's say, a 2-lane highway, imagine it's a 2-lane highway, please do let me know. Multiple points of times, have you got frustrated because you're not able to overtake multiple lorries which are there ahead of you? Think of it and do let me know. Right? Have you not got frustrated? Have you not seen it? Whether you're sitting in a bus, you're traveling in a car, etc., etc. Right? There will be, let's say, 2 or 3 lorries, heavy, right, freight transportation lorries. They are going in one lane, very slowly they are going, and in opposite lane also continuously vehicles are coming. You will feel frustrated because you're not able to overtake because the number of lanes are very less. You'll keep on complaining. You'll keep on scolding government. Right? You'll keep on telling the government in the car only, getting frustrated. What is the point of having a highway if I'm not able to overtake? Why? What is the problem to construct one more lane just beside like this so that I can easily overtake them, etc. So argument is simple. More the number of lanes, easier transportation. Congestion will come down. And right, remember this also. India is known to be having one of the highest accident rates on its highways. Right? This is very often given in the newspapers also. India also has one of the highest accident rates on their highways. And one of the reason is congestion. Congestion is very high. When the congestion is very high, automatically safety will become a problem. Okay. So cost of transportation in India is also higher. Right? Again, if I take the latest data, around 8 to 9%. In developed countries, it is around 6%. In case of India, it is around 8 to 9%. Delays in completion of the projects. Whenever there is, right, let's say, delay in terms of, let's say, pandemic. Right? Pandemic led to delays in completion of the projects. If labor availability is not there, if labor can get better wages somewhere else, labor will shift to other jobs, etc. Land acquisition becomes an issue. Clearance from the government agencies will become an issue. Right? Let's say High Court or Supreme Court intervention will also become an issue. So there is a lot of issues in terms of completion of the projects. There will be delays in completion. And please remember this. Instead of completing in, let's say, 2 years, if you complete in 4 years, if you complete in 3 years, what is the problem? Problem is cost of the project will increase. I'll repeat it again. Many of you will simply say, sir, instead of completing in 2 years, imagine I completed the road project in 3 years. What is the problem? I've completed, right? What is the problem? Problem is cost of the project will increase. How so? Don't you think rather than hiring labor for 2 years, now you've hired people for 3 years, which means prices or the money or expenditure will increase. You'll have taken certain equipments on rental basis. Rather than taking on rent for 2 years, now you will take it on rent for 3 years. Don't you think the expenditure will again increase? Right? So there are so many expenses which will start rising up, increasing whenever there's a delay in the completion of the projects. Whenever there's a delay in the completion of the projects. Let me give you one current affairs example so that you understand it clearly. Please do let me know, in the last 1 week, how many of you have heard of Bharatmala project? Let me see. In the last 1 week, how many of you have heard of Bharatmala project? Government of India implemented a project by the name of Bharatmala project. Right? Very, very famous now. Very, very famous. they implemented a project, again road construction only. They implemented a project by the name of Bharatmala project. Under the Bharatmala project, Government of India wants to construct around 72,000, odd number, around I'm saying, around 72,000 kilometer of road network under Bharatmala. But because of various delays, because of various issues, right, land acquisition, right, labor cost, raw material cost, pandemic, etc., out of this Bharatmala, we were supposed to finish part of it. It was divided into two parts, phase 1 and phase 2. We were supposed to implement phase 1, under which we are supposed to complete around 34,000 kilometer length of a road network. We are supposed to complete it by 2022. I'm connecting into current affairs here. Listen to me carefully. Around 34,000, right? 34,080 kilometers to be precise. Around 34,000 under phase 1 was supposed to be completed in, right, under the Bharatmala project by 2022. And Government of India now very recently has stated, no, we have not been able to complete 34,000 kilometer. Point number 1. Point number 2, we have extended the deadline. Right? We have extended the deadline to, right, around 2028 now. To around 2028, we have extended the deadline to 2028 now. And third point, because of pandemic, because of higher cost of raw material, labor cost, etc., the cost of this Bharatmala project also has expanded. The cost of Bharatmala project also has been extended now. It has increased by a large number. And that is the precise reason there is an expectation. Again, expectation. After a couple of days, you will come across budget now. Today is how much? Today is 17th. After 2 weeks, exactly after 2 weeks, you will come across union budget. So there is an expectation that Government of India would simply subsume Bharatmala, discontinue the term Bharatmala, take this project, put it under Vision 2047. Now tell me one more current affairs topic. Have you people heard of Vision 2047? It is yet to be announced, by the way. Have you people come across or heard of Vision 2047? Right? Basically, Government of India wants to bring in a huge policy, Vision 2047, which will encompass means include a lot of reforms. Sir, why 2047? 100 years of independence. Simple point, 100 years of independence. So Government of India is expected to announce Vision 2047 very soon, and expected to be announced in the budget. Whether they will announce or not, you will have to wait and see. But more importantly, now the expectation is that Bharatmala initiative, we have not been very successful. So we might include, right, this idea of having a more national highways, etc., under Vision 2047 itself. This is being discussed now. Please be very careful. So delays in the completion of the projects. Large part of the logistics is unorganized. Right? What do you mean by unorganized? Please remember this. Unorganized basically means certain part of the economy, that is, right, production is happening, sales is happening, etc. But these sellers, these producers are not registered. Is it okay? What do you mean by unorganized? Right? What do you mean by unorganized? Certain part of the economy. We can divide economy into organized as well as unorganized. Unorganized refers to part of the economy where the producers, sellers, etc., these are not registered. For example, sir, what do you mean by registration? Right? They will also use the term incorporated. Unincorporated. If I want to start a company, I'm supposed to be registered. There are multiple laws of Government of India. For example, there is one law, Factories Act. Right? Under Factories Act, if I start a company, I'm supposed to be registered with the government. If I'm not registered, my company, the company is called as unincorporated. So the unincorporated entities are part of unorganized sector. And what is the problem with the unincorporated companies? The sizes are very, very small. Now please understand, apart from this, there is also one more term called as formal and informal. Formal and informal, right? Most of the times, even in the books, they use both of them interchangeably. But there's a slight difference. Listen to me very carefully now. Listen to me very carefully. Anything which is unincorporated, it is called as the unorganized sector. Unorganized sector. Whereas formal, informal essentially means whenever a company will have, whenever any enterprise will have 10 or more than 10 employees, it is called as a formal enterprise. 10 or more than 10 employees, it is called as formal. Informal means less than 10 employees. And generally we have seen an enterprise which will have 1 people, 2 people, 3 people working, that is up to 10 people, these are generally not registered. These are generally not registered. So based on this, can I simply say these informal units will become part of unorganized sector? Please do let me know. These informal units become part of unorganized sector. And the problem here is because these are not registered, government doesn't have data. Government doesn't know how much revenue they are generating, how many employees are working, what kind of policy you are supposed to make, etc., etc. Lot of issues regarding policy making whenever unorganized sector is very, very high. And in case of India, please remember this, lot of participants in the logistics sector, are a part of unorganized sector, right? They are part of unorganized sector. These are informal in nature. And that is also one cause of concern related to the road mode of a transportation or overall logistics sector in India. Now, what are the reforms which have been undertaken by the government? What kind of reforms have been undertaken by the government? Point number one, new models of investment we are promoting now. For example, under PPP, we are promoting hybrid annuity model. We have discussed hybrid annuity model under investment model last week. Second one, there are also various steps which have been taken by the government to reduce the cost of transportation. For example, GST, goods and services tax. Let me see, this is my 23rd class. I believe we have discussed GST in 5th or 6th or 7th class. Please do let me know. Is GST going to reduce cost of transportation in India? Yes or no? Let me see how many of you are revising. That's very important for me. I need to understand whether you people are revising or not. And please go back, revise, jog your memory backwards and tell me, is GST going to reduce the cost of transportation or not? Of course, yes, it is going to reduce the cost of transportation. Second one, FASTag. Let me see. Right, how many of you agree? FASTag will also reduce the cost of transportation in India. Government of India very recently has accepted this. Right, very recently a report also has been published. FASTag, some of you are saying no, my dear, yes. Answer is yes. And by the way, how many of you attended my webinar, right, last month? I'm sorry, not last month, this month only. January, I believe 2nd, I took a webinar. On the 2nd of January, I took a webinar, right, evening 8:30 to 10:30. How many of you attended that webinar? Economic webinar, current affairs webinar. I discussed how FASTag is actually reducing the cost of transportation, time taken for transportation in India. Right, and that's a fact, by the way. That's a fact. How? Compared to earlier system where cash was given, right? You used to take change, a printout was given, etc. Now we are not doing that. A scanner will be there. They are using RFID technology, right? RFID, radio frequency identification. RFID technology, they are using it. And right, when the vehicle will go near to that particular toll, that is a gate. When the vehicle will go near to the gate, automatically it will scan and amount will be debited from your account. Toll will be cut. Toll tax will be cut from your account. Right? And this technology has made it easier to pay taxes. That is a point number one. It has made it easier to pay taxes. Digital transactions. Digital transactions are promoted now. You don't have to pay cash. Money will be debited from your account. Second, because it's technology. Scanning is done, technology is used. Time taken for payment compared to earlier, it has come down drastically. It has come down. In fact, Government of India data says the time taken at the toll has come down by 90% now. More than 90%. It has come down by more than 90%. So time taken has come down. Easily you can pass through a toll now, right? So the time required to pass a toll has reduced. Length of the queue has reduced. Vehicles which are waiting has reduced. Emissions around the toll has come down, etc., etc. We have discussed all of this. So remember, FASTag is also a reform which has been introduced to reduce the time taken and the cost associated with the logistics sector. Third, logistics sector has been given infrastructure status. The sector of logistics has been given infrastructure status. What do you mean by infrastructure status? Remember this. Whenever any sector is given infrastructure status, it simply means now they can take infrastructure loans. Very simple, right? Now they can take infrastructure loans, right? The banks, special institutions, etc. will give you infrastructure loans. For example, please do let me know, you as a retail borrower, can you take a housing loan from a bank? Correct? Can you take a housing loan from a bank? In the same way, there are infrastructure loans which are given. So once you're identified as infrastructure sector, you can take infrastructure loans. That is point number one. And when you're identified as infrastructure, can you attract foreign investment now? Yes, right? Because under infrastructure sector, FDI is allowed in India. Can you go to the foreign market and borrow under the external commercial borrowings? Yes, that is also allowed. So lending will become, borrowing will become easier. You'll be able to attract a lot of investments. That is the importance of according or giving infrastructure status to logistics sector. Now, please do let me know, last week, do you remember this point? Do you remember this point? The cold warehousing also has been given infrastructure status. I'll repeat the statement. It's a fact, by the way. I'm asking question, but it's a fact. Earlier, we discussed food processing. Under food processing, I said even the cold infrastructure, cold warehousing has been given infrastructure status by the government, right? So it makes it easier. If you're a developer for cold warehousing, it makes it very easier for you to borrow, attract investments now. Okay, next. New logistics division has been set up, right? New logistics division has been set up in the commerce ministry. Earlier there was no logistics division. We have a separate division for only logistics now. Now what is the use of it? What is the advantage or what is the objective of the new logistics division? First one, the logistics division will study the policies of government of India, and if there is a need to change any policy, right, introduce any new policy, etc., they will give recommendations, they will give advice to the government. Second, there are certain procedures, there are certain measures which have been implemented by the government over a period of time. Should we change the measures? Should we make it easier, right, to set up companies in the logistics, etc., etc.? These improvement in existing procedures will also be recommended. If there are any issues which are faced by the logistics sector, again, right, they will be conveyed to Government of India. And finally, the division will also recommend introduction of new type of technology, latest technology to be used in the logistics sector. Now, please do let me know, right, are you very often coming across technology in roadways now? Usage of technology in the roads sector, usage of technology in the civil aviation market, usage of technology in the port sector, etc., etc. All these are important. All these are important. Please be aware of it. Now, what are the reforms? What are the reforms which have been proposed, right? Which have been proposed under the road sector or logistics sector by the government? Other reforms. Bharat Mala Pariyojana. Already just now discussed. Bharat Mala Pariyojana. Under this, we want to construct more than 72,000 kilometers. Right? These are divided into two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 was supposed to be completed by 2022, but it has been extended till 2028. Under this, we want to construct multiple types of roads, such as border roads, the roads in the coastal regions, etc. Right? So this is one more reform in the road sector. Last reform in the road sector is Bhumi Rashi portal. Bhumi Rashi portal. This portal has been developed and is basically used by Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways, MORTH. Ministry of Roadways, Transportation and Highways. Now, what is the use of Bhumi Rashi portal? What is the importance of Bhumi Rashi portal? Earlier, it was found that whenever the Ministry of Roadways wants to construct a national highway, they would prepare a document, they would prepare a project report, circulate it amongst all the other relevant ministries. What do you mean by relevant ministry? You want to construct a national highway which will cross multiple cities and villages. You will have to give the document to Ministry of Rural Development. You will have to give the document to Ministry of Urban Development. You'll have to give it to Ministry of let's say Finance also. So multiple ministries, multiple departments were involved, and the file used to keep on moving from one department to another department like this. Now, whenever a physical document, a file like this will keep on moving from one ministry to another ministry, time taken will be very, very high. Lot of ministries are involved, lot of departments are involved. Time consumption to get approvals will be very, very lengthy. How can we reduce it? Now, Government of India says we will introduce a new system, right? We will introduce a new portal wherein we are going to create the project file but in a digital format. We are going to create a file but in a digital format. That is, the digital copy of the file will be sent to all the ministries. Now, is it okay if I say, rather than sending physical file, if digital copies are sent to all the ministries, we will be able to get approvals much sooner? Correct? Yes or no? Does it make sense to you? We'll be able to get all the approvals from whichever ministry is approval is required. We'll be able to get it much sooner. That is the whole objective of the Bhumi Rashi portal. We wanted to approach Ministry of Rural Development and help in acquiring land in a rural part of India. We wanted to approach Ministry of Urban Development. We wanted to help acquire land in urban India. So notification of the project, preparation of the list of the beneficiaries whose land will be acquired, getting approvals from all the departments, etc. will be done much sooner now. And government says after launching the portal, after the portal has been launched, it is operational now. The processing time for land acquisition has actually reduced from months together earlier to hardly around 2 weeks now. We're able to get all these cleared within a span of 2 to 3 weeks, which is reducing the time taken, which is reducing the work burden on the ministries. So this is one more initiative that has been undertaken by the government to promote road infrastructure in India. Can we go to the next one? Everybody is okay. Can we go to the next one now? Port infrastructure. So how many types of infrastructure are there? Port infrastructure and civil aviation. Two more types. After that, we are done with infrastructure. Port and civil aviation. After that, infrastructure is done and dusted. So port infrastructure. Now please have a look at the picture here. Right? Please have a look at the picture. This is a picture of a port. Now, why are you showing, right? Many of you ask me, sir, why are you showing, right? Sunset is happening. Why are you showing such a nice picture of port? We will use it. We will use it. Just remember this, because there is a saying, no, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Rather than explaining to you what happens in a port, etc., if I show a picture and then tell you what is the problem here, you will understand it very quickly. Now, right, what is this port sector? Port sector in India, right, we generally divide the ports into two types. We divide the ports into two types. One is called as a major port. Second one is called as a non-major port or a minor port. Non-major port or a minor port. Now, major ports, please understand, these are 12 in number. 13th one has been proposed. As far as I know, it is not yet operational. So how many major ports are operational as of now in India? 12 major ports are operational. 6 on the eastern coast, 6 on the western coast. Totally 12 major ports are operational. But what is more important regarding major ports? Major ports will come under the purview, will come under the regulation of union government. Major ports will come under the regulation, right, or the purview of powers of central government, union government. So central government through Major Port Authorities Act, MPA, Major Port Authorities Act, will regulate all of these major ports in India. And these major ports will generally handle more than 50% of the cargo, which will come into India or which will go out of India. And ports are very important, by the way. Ports are very, very important. Why? Please look at this data. More than 95%, by volume and more than 60% by value of trade conducted by India is done through ports. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. More than 95% of volume and more than 60% by value of trade that India conducts with the rest of the world basically is done through ports sector only. That's the reason ports are very, very important, right? And that should not be very difficult for you to understand looking at what is happening in Red Sea now. Right, please do let me know, is there a concern regarding what is happening in Red Sea for Indian economy? Of course, yes. Very often you're coming across this, and thereby lies the importance of waterways, or let's say sea routes, right? Usage of ports, etc., etc. Now come back to the discussion. Minor ports are also referred as a non-major ports. There are more than 200 non-major ports which are operating in India. And whenever you say non-major ports, these will generally come under the purview, under the regulation of the state governments. This will come under the purview or the regulation of state governments. It's somewhere around 40 to 45% of the total cargo which is traded by India or into and go out of India will be handled by the non-major ports in India. So this is basically the split of major as well as non-major ports who will regulate, etc. Now, what are the issues? What are the concerns, associated with the port sector in India? Point number one, the turnaround time, TAT. They will simply say TAT, T-A-T, turn around time. The turnaround time is very, very high in India. Very, very high in the sense compared to other countries, our turnaround time is higher. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by turnaround time here? The average time taken between the arrival and the departure of the vessel. Vessel means ship. The average time taken for the ship to come, hand over the goods, cargo, and go out, move out, it is called as a turnaround time. Now, what is this a turnaround time? Why it is higher in India? Please have a look at the picture. This is what I wanted to use the picture for. Please look at the picture. Point number one, whenever ships will bring cargo means, containers. Cargo is nothing but goods which will be brought into containers. So whenever the ships will carry the cargo like this, is it okay if I say we should have sufficient infrastructure either to load containers or remove the containers from the vessels? Correct? All of you agree with me? Anybody has a difficulty? Please do let me know. You need machineries. People cannot be used. These are very, very heavy. You cannot simply say, sir, use more of human labor. People are there in more number in India. My dear, these containers are very, very heavy. These containers are very heavy. You cannot use people to shift these containers. Which means, what is the infrastructure at the port? What is the infrastructure at the port will play a very important role in time taken either to load containers or unload containers. Point is that in India, the infrastructure at the ports is not well developed. Very simple point. Remember this. The infrastructure that we have at the ports is not very well developed. Now you'll ask me, sir, what do you mean by that? What if the kind of technology, let's say the machinery that we are using are older, are not updated, These are very old machineries, etc. I'll give you another example. Can you see these, the routes which are there here? Can you see the roads which are there to enter into port and come out of port? Think of it. Please think of it. What if the number of lanes are lesser and the road is also narrower? Think of this and do let me know. What if number of lanes are lesser to enter into port and to come out of port, and the road is also narrower. Don't you think in that case, the containers which are supposed to be exported, there are trucks which are carrying the containers which are supposed to be exported, lot of these trucks will be standing by to enter into port. There will be a lot of time taken to enter into port. And even if the containers have been unloaded, now these should be loaded into the truck, because the machinery is not updated. Machinery is older. Time taken for uploading, or let's say putting these containers on the truck, will also be higher. So I hope you understand when I say turnaround time is higher in case of India. It is higher in case of India. And many ports, many other ports, for example, we have Shanghai port, we have Abu Dhabi port, etc. Many of these ports are very well developed. These use very high technologies, either to load containers as well as unload containers from the vessels. That is the reason the time taken for vessels to come and go will be very lesser. And understand the logic behind it. If turnaround time is lesser, automatically cost of transportation will also become lesser. I'll repeat the statement. If the turnaround time is lowered, if it is reduced, automatically cost of transportation, cost of logistics will also be lesser. Right? So in India, on an average, and as per last year's economic survey, the TAT, turnaround time, was 2.25 days. The global average is less than 1 day. Global average is less than 1 day. Port infrastructure is not very well developed. We do not have very good railway connectivity to the port areas. We do not have very good sufficient road connectivity to the port areas. Going in, coming out, transporting has also become a problem. Most of the transportation is done using road network in India, either to ports or from the ports. Automatically that will increase the cost of logistics, that will increase the cost of raw material, increase the cost of the product, etc. Time consumption for customs. What do you mean by customs here? Procedures, right? Customs means the documentation, the procedure that we are supposed to follow to either export a product or import a product. Documentation procedure. Right? Generally, it is raised as a concern that the customs procedures are lengthy in India. Right? It is lengthy. It will need lot of documentation, etc. But again, please understand, Government of India is trying to simplify the process. There's a reform which has been implemented by the government called as Turant Customs. Turant Customs. And the Turant Customs, it's a e-governance initiative. Right? Government says if you want to submit documents, you can do it online. You want to get clearances to import something, you can again do it online only. So the Turant Custom initiative has been launched by government to make it easier to get customs clearance. Issues with linkage with other regions. Right? The production happens in many other regions, right? Other states which do not have access to port, or have access but the distance is a barrier, etc. So there are issues with the linkages to other regions also, where a lot of production, manufacturing is done in India. So these are some of the issues that is plaguing port sector in India. Now let's look at what are the reforms. I'll discuss two very important reforms here. One is Sagarmala initiative. Right? One is Sagarmala initiative, Sagarmala project. And under Sagarmala initiative itself, there is one more initiative of Government of India, Inland Waterways. Inland Waterways. Now, what is this Sagarmala initiative? Under Sagarmala initiative, Government of India says, we want to promote port infrastructure. We want to promote port infrastructure. How can we promote port infrastructure? Because we are importing, exporting a lot of goods and services, and we want to promote more and more exports. Port infrastructure plays a very important role. We will promote it. How so? Government says, right? I'll come back to the let's say the measures taken here. Government says we want to reduce the cost of transportation, either from the port to inner areas or from inner regions of India to port. Right? We want to reduce the cost of logistics, reduce the cost of transportation. We will promote export competitiveness. If you reduce the cost of transportation, automatically competitiveness of exports will start increasing. We will ensure that in future, Whenever industries are promoted, we'll try to promote industries which are very nearer to the coastal regions, which are nearer to the the port region. And fourth one, we will also optimize it, make it much more efficient to import a container and export the containers. We'll make it much more efficient, right, in terms of procedures, in terms of time consumption, etc. We'll optimize import as well as export of container movement. So these are some of the objectives of a Sagar Mala initiative. Now, how we will achieve them? How are we going to achieve optimization of import and export of containers? How are we going to reduce the cost of transportation to, let's say, ports or from the ports, etc.? These are some of the initiatives. One, government says will promote usage of inland waterways. I'll discuss this next. Have patience. Government says will promote the usage of inland waterways. Right. Second one, government says we will develop more and more ports under Sagarmala initiative. We will develop new type of ports. And when government says we will develop new ports, government also says we will promote usage of new technology. Not the usual technology, not the technology that other ports are using. Will promote usage of new equipments, new technology, modernization of the ports will take place. So one is waterways. Second one, new port through port connectivity. That is, we will connect the ports with railway lines. We will develop national highways. We will construct coastal roads, etc. So that the connectivity of ports with other regions in India will improve. If I connect it with railway lines, automatically freight transportation can happen much easily. The cost of transportation will also come down. Right? We will also promote industrialization in the port region. That is, SCGs can be promoted to be set up in the coastal regions, in the port, nearby the port. Right? So that is basically the argument. And again, understand this. Sir, why specifically SCGs? Please do let me know. Is it okay if I say we want to promote SCG model because SCGs predominantly export to the international market? Correct? SCGs predominantly exported to the international market. So we want to set up SCGs nearby the coastal regions, nearby the port regions, so that it is easier to manufacture and export it to the international market. We will also promote coastal community development. We will also promote the idea of a community development. How? Fishing harbors can be developed. Fishing harbors are nothing but regions where fishing is actually promoted. Infrastructure for fishing will be provided. Right? We will also promote tourism. We will also promote coastal tourism project, etc. Right? So these are certain right reforms Government of India has announced under the idea of a Sagar Mala initiative. Now there is one reform here, waterways. There is one important reform called as waterways. Now what is this waterway? Waterway in a nutshell means any flow of water, right? Flow of water, such as water will flow in river. River is nothing but water flow, right? Water is also flowing in the canals. So these kind of flows of water will be harnessed, will utilize the flow of water to transport passengers, to transport, right? Let's say goods in India. So utilizing these types of river flows, water flows, etc. for transportation purposes is called as a waterway. Right? It's simply called as a waterway. Now, in case of India, please understand, don't you think, especially in the context of rivers, there are a lot of disputes, correct? Let me see. In case of rivers, there are a lot of disputes, right? Disputes in southern states or amongst the southern states, disputes even in some of the other states which are not southern states also. So river water, there's always a dispute. So now question arises, how can we promote water, right? Let's say the river, for promotion of transportation. Government of India has a very simple policy for it. Government of India will identify certain waterways and will declare these waterways as national waterways. I'll repeat the statement here. Government of India will identify certain waterways and will declare these waterways as national waterways. And please be very careful, right? I'll give you Saturday, I'll give you certain articles. All of you reading about what is happening regarding Ayodhya now, correct? Again, don't worry about any other angle. Focus only on the economics angle. Focus only on the economics angle. Now there's a talk. Now there's a talk that certain rivers are connecting these right ritualistic places. Right, certain rivers are connecting these places. Why don't we promote a tourism project? Why don't we promote tourism project which are connecting these right important regions? Lot of discussion is happening regarding this. Please be very careful. Again, my argument is, don't worry about the political angle, don't worry about anything else. Focus only on economic angle here. Focus only on economics. Suddenly, please do let me know, because of this discussion, can UPSC ask you a question about waterways in India? Think of it. Right? Can UPSC ask you a question on waterways in India? Of course, they can ask you. And to make it difficult, they can combine concepts in geography, combine concept of waterway, ask you a two-statement question, three-statement question, where two questions will be from economics, one question will be on geography. How so? Rivers. You will discuss about rivers even in geography. How many rivers are there in southern plateau? How many rivers are there in northern plateau, etc., etc.? Which river, right? Which is the tributary, etc., etc. So please be very careful. My recommendation to you is, please be very, very careful. Right? Do not read any article just like an article. You will have to connect it. You will have to connect it in multiple ways like this. So I hope you understand. Come back to the discussion here. Waterways is nothing but the government of India will identify certain right a stretch of let's say canal water, right, or let's say rivers, etc., and will declare this as a national waterway. So far, government of India has declared 111 waterways as national waterways. Is it okay? 111 waterways as national waterways. And government says, once I declare this waterway as a national waterway, I will have the power to develop. I, through an authority, Inland Waterways Authority, I will develop these waterways. I'll maintain, I'll operate these waterways. So India has an extensive network of inland waterways. The total length of waterways which can be utilized in India is more than 20,000 kilometers. Navigable length of waters is more than 20,000. Not sufficient. Many other countries have developed much more than this. The government previously has declared, right, or had declared 5 inland waterways as national waterways. Now it has declared 111 waterways as national waterways. 111 waterways. Have a look at this. 111 inland waterways, right, including the earlier 5. Now we have declared this as national waterways. The inland waterways has a huge potential for India. It has a huge potential for India. As of now, around 10% of total transportation is done through waterways. We want to increase it. We want to further increase it over a period of time. Now, what is the advantage? What is the advantage of promoting waterways? Why should we promote waterways in India? Right? Why should we utilize more and more of waterways? Point number 1, if you compare between road, railways and waterways, waterways is the most efficient. I'll repeat the statement. Right? If you compare between railways, roadways and waterways, waterways is the most efficient in terms of very low emissions, in terms of very less fuel consumption, and third, very low cost also. Right? Cost wise, emission wise, fuel consumption wise, waterways is much efficient compared to other modes of transportation. Point number 2, if you develop waterways, now there will be a lot of job opportunities which are going to get created. For example, waterways development means, let's say, companies will purchase vessels, they will hire people to load, unload, operate or run these vessels. Warehousing will be promoted now, right, along the river water, etc. So there will be a lot of job opportunities which can be created if you promote waterways. Third one, it will reduce the cost of transportation. Fourth one, if you want to develop road, you need to acquire land. You want to develop, right, let's say, railway, you need to acquire land. But waterways, river water is naturally flowing, right? You need to just maintain the river water flow. That's it. The river water is already there. It is naturally flowing. You know, you don't need to construct a path and introduce river into that, right? So river water is already there. So cost of land acquisition is very minimal. Hassles related to land acquisition is very minimal, and will benefit not only the freight transportation, right? Will benefit not only the freight transportation, but also will benefit passenger transportation. For example, please do let me know, have you come across MV Ganga Vilas? It was there for the last couple of months in the newspaper, even couple of days also it was there in the newspaper. Please do let me know, MV Ganga Vilas, one of the longest tourism projects, one of the longest tourism project in the world, passenger tourism project in the world, MV Ganga Vilas. It was there in the newspaper. Please read it. So Government of India says we can use it even for tourism sector, promote tourism sector. We can use it for passenger transportation, etc. Okay. So these are some of the advantages associated with waterways. Anybody has got any kind of a doubt so far? Please do let me know. So the job opportunities will be the same for every ways. Why it's an advantage? My dear, please understand. In roadways, already a lot of jobs have been created. In waterways, now if it suddenly booms, usage of waterways suddenly booms, number of jobs created will be very, very high. Roadways, already jobs are there. But in waterways, the potential of usage is very high. What if lot of companies will enter into India, foreign companies and Indian companies, they'll say we'll launch tourism project. They say we'll launch a transportation project. We'll transport goods and services. So the potential of generation of jobs is very high using right waterways now. What are the concerns? What are the issues there? Point number one, you will have to spend lot of money to maintain the river projects. I'll repeat the statement. You'll have to spend lot of money to maintain these projects, right? What do you mean by lot of money needed? My dear, in geography, you'll come across a concept of silting. You have come across this or not? In geography, you'll come across an idea called as silting. That is, river water will flow, and because river water will flow with a force, there's a force. It will carry particles, correct? It will carry particles and it will keep on depositing particles, right? Let's say this is the river. Let's say this is a river. River will carry particles and will start depositing, right, particles here. It will carry, right, sand, silt, etc. It will deposit here, or it will deposit somewhere in the middle here. Now please let me know, because of this, right, will it be a problem for transportation? Correct? Yes or no? Will this lead to a problem with transportation? Of course, yes. Right? It will create a lot of problems related to transportation using waterways. So you'll have to spend money and you'll have to keep on clearing this. It is called as dredging process. Money is required to be spent and clear all of this. This is called as a dredging process. Right? So you'll have to spend money to maintain this. That's a headache. That's a headache related to waterways. Point number one. Point number two, all the rivers in India will not have water flow throughout the year. This is also important. Remember this. Right? For example, in geography, you'll read about this. Southern rivers in southern part of India, right? We will not have the same flow of water throughout the year. Whereas rivers in northern part of India will have a very high amount of flow throughout the year, because these are Himalayan rivers. Very simple. These are Himalayan rivers. So you want to use water flow, let's say river flow, to transport goods, to transport people, right? If the river flow is optimum, if the river flow is constant, it is easier to transport. If the river flow keeps on reducing water, right? Let's say the depth of the channel will keep on reducing. Don't you think that will become a problem? Can I connect it to current affairs now? Can I connect it to current affairs? Please tell me. And this you should have done it by now. Are you people reading about Panama Canal? Panama Canal. Please do let me know. Right? One is Red Sea issue. No doubt, Red Sea issue is a problem. Right? It's a problem. Are you people reading about Panama Canal? It is a man-made canal. No doubt. It's basically a man-made canal. But have you read that availability of water has come down? And because right, availability of water has come down, crossing this canal, which would have taken minutes, it is delayed now. It is taking weeks to transport using this canal. I hope you're able to connect it to current affairs, right? I hope you understand this. You should be doing this. You should be doing it, by the way. I don't say, sir, it was not there in Hindu newspaper. My dear, UPSC doesn't care. Do you think UPSC will ask questions only from Hindu newspaper? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Right? So I hope you understand there is always a linkage that you can provide and it is easier to remember it. So if water level will come down, very difficult to transport. Very difficult to transport. Investment requirement is also right there. Comparatively, yes, it is easier to right, let's say transport, etc. But you'll have to spend money, right, to invest and set up warehousing, to purchase right, let's say cruises, to purchase vessels, etc. Investment requirement is also a concern. And finally, right, loss of ecology. Finally, loss of ecology. If you're going to use right vessels, you're going to construct infrastructure in the river, right along the river bed now. Is there a concern regarding loss of ecology? Right. So definitely yes, there is also concern regarding loss of ecology. And so these are some of the issues associated with inland waterways, a mode of transportation. Can we go forward? Can we go can we go forward? Is there anybody issue regarding what I've discussed so far? Sir, this was there in Hindu. Great. Right? If it was there in Hindu, if you have read about it, please remember it. Right? There is a issue regarding Red Sea also. There's an issue regarding Panama Canal also. Transportation. International transportation is becoming very, very difficult now. Very difficult. Okay. Any other concern? Can we go forward? Sir, we want break. Let me cover this last part, civil aviation market. After that, we'll take a break. Don't worry. After this, I'll give you a break. Can we go forward now? Anybody has a doubt? Okay. Let me go forward. Airports in India. Airport, civil aviation. Civil aviation means, right, the market where passengers will be transported using air mode of a transportation. That is simple. Using aeroplanes, we are transporting goods, we are transporting people. Okay, that is aviation market. Okay. Now, in case of aviation market, please understand what are the important points. In aviation market, the ultimate control, I'll not say complete control, ultimate control, regulatory authority for aviation market is the government of India. Government of India through various authorities. For example, there is an authority, DGCA. This is there very recently in the newspaper, DGCA, Director General for Civil Aviation. So DGCA through this authority is regulating civil aviation market. Now in case of India, airports have been developed by the government earlier through an authority called as Airport Authority of India. And now even private sector companies have been allowed to develop and maintain airports in India. So private sector entry is allowed to develop also and to maintain, to operate airports also in India. Okay. So these are certain basic points associated with airports. As far as I'm concerned, please do not by heart how many airports are there, right? How many of them are big airports, how many of them are small airports, which airport will handle highest capacity, etc. All of that UPSC is not bothered about it. Now, what are the concerns? What are the issues associated with civil aviation market in India or airports in India? Point number one, airports in India, please understand, large chunk of population in India, more than 90% of the population in India doesn't use a civil aviation mode. It is either because one, the airports are not developed in their regions, right? In their region, in their let's say cities, airports are not there. Second, airports are there, but the cost, the affordability is not possible. Right, so airports are not there. That is one problem. Second one is, even if the airport is there, the prices are unaffordable for the population. So that is the reason. That's the reason more than 90% of India's population doesn't get access to civil aviation market in India. Hardly around 2 to 3%. Hardly around 2 to 3% generally gets access. And even if a city has one airport, think of it. Even if one city has one airport, don't you think because there is no competitor to this airport, I repeat, because there is no competitor to this airport, whatever charges they will impose for tariffs, for tickets, etc., you will have to pay for it, whether you like it or you don't like it. You may not use the infrastructure that is there in the airport. You may not use it, but you will have to pay charges for it. Right? So there is an argument because we have only one airport, whether operated by the government, operated by the private sector, doesn't matter. Because we have only one airport, right? This becomes one of the reasons why ticket prices are very high in India, and because the ticket prices are very high, the tickets are unaffordable by large chunk of population. So airports usually act like a monopoly. Monopoly means single provider. Single provider. And because there is a monopoly situation like this, you do not have any other alternative. Either you want to travel, pay higher ticket prices. If you do not want to pay higher ticket prices, don't use a civil aviation market. Right? So airports usually act like a monopoly. Earlier, for example, I also told you, do you remember this? Gold plating of airport infrastructure. Please do let me know. Do you remember this? Right? Gold plating of airport infrastructure. Airports are unnecessarily spending a lot of money and developing high cost infrastructure. High cost infrastructure which is not used by large chunk of passengers. And when they develop this high cost infrastructure, what they will do is they'll simply transfer the cost to customers, increase the ticket prices. Right? So airports usually act like a monopoly, and this will exclude a large chunk of population because the ticket prices are unaffordable. Air travel is very costlier in India. Very costlier in India, right? Have you seen the ticket prices very recently? New Year, even now for that matter, ticket prices are very high. And that is the precise reason Government of India, now at least I hope you can connect the dots. That's the reason Government of India, even though it knows that in railways, a passenger segment, it might incur losses, it will provide lot of subsidies for passengers. Are you able to understand why Government of India will provide the subsidies for railway tariffs in India for passenger segment? They know that they are going to incur losses. But what is the other option? What is the other option? If they have market pricing, if they basically say no subsidies, market pricing will be decided for railway tariffs also. Don't you think large chunk of poor population which mainly uses railways, even the railways will become unaffordable? Right? Even the railways will become unaffordable then. Okay. So air travel is very costlier in case of India. And please understand, in railways, government controls pricing. In airways, it is dependent on supply and demand. Right? I hope you understand this. In railways, government through implicit subsidies will control pricing of the railway tariff. Whereas in case of airways, private sector, government doesn't decide the tariff. Private sector based on supply and demand will decide the pricing. Will decide the pricing in case of the civil aviation market. That is the reason. Have you not seen now? Let me connect it to current affairs. Is there a rise in ticket prices to the flights which are going to Ayodhya? Current affairs, purely because of current affairs. I'll give you one more example. Let me know, is there a rise in the ticket prices of the flights which are going to Ayodhya now? Why? Right, private sector, they know that the demand is there and they will put a premium price. They will put a premium price also. If you're worried, sir, why you always you talk about Ayodhya, I'll introduce one more. World Cup. Tell me now, World Cup. During the finals of the World Cup, what was the ticket prices of the flights which are going to Ahmedabad? I hope you understand this. Now, can UPSC prepare a question on this? Can a UPSC prepare a question on this? For example, can they give you this and ask you whether this is a cost push inflation, demand pull inflation, or wage price inflation, or wage rise inflation? Think of it. Can UPSC say recently it was seen like this? Recently it was seen that the hotel prices, flight prices increased during World Cup final in the city of Ahmedabad. This is dash type of inflation. Can UPSC trick you into these kind of statements? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. And by the way, the answer is demand pull. Answer is demand pull. Right? During World Cup, hotel did not provide you excellent services. They did not give you more of a food which will increase their cost. Absolutely no. They kept their services same, but they knew that if they have 100 rooms, there will be a demand for 1,000 rooms now. So that is the reason, basically, increase the price. Demand pull inflation. So please be very careful. Connect the current affairs. It becomes easier to understand. Okay. So air travel is comparatively very costly in India. Aviation turbine fuel, ATF. What is aviation turbine fuel? It is basically fuel which is used by aeroplanes. Right? A car will use diesel or petrol. Two-wheeler will use petrol. In the same way, aeroplane will use ATF. ATF, right now, please understand, there is no GST rate on ATF. There is absolutely no GST rate on ATF. And because there is no GST rate on ATF, central government will have its own tax on ATF, and state government will also have its own tax on ATF. As a result of this, ATF prices have increased, and this will lead to higher ticket prices. In fact, in case of India, please understand this. In case of India, ATF prices contribute more than 40 to 50% of ticket prices. I'll repeat the statement. ATF prices contribute more than 40 to 50% of ticket prices itself. Right? Apart from ATF, there is one more component. Right? There's one more component, MRO. I'll discuss that also now. Connectivity issues in lower tier of cities. Right? That is in smaller cities with population of 50,000, 5,000, 1 lakh, etc. There is a very low connectivity of civil aviation market. Okay? Very low connectivity of civil aviation market. Now, next issue. Next concern regarding civil aviation market, maintenance, repairs and overhaul. Maintenance, repairs and overhaul. Now, what is this maintenance, repairs and overhaul? Whenever you will use aeroplanes, from time to time, there has to be certain repairs done for the aeroplane. Correct? From time to time, certain maintenance has to be done for aeroplanes. So whenever aeroplanes are flying, after certain number of flights, certain repairs will be incurred, certain maintenance has to be done. And that is mandatory in India. That's mandatory. Government of India has rules regarding this. It is mandatory. Most of these civil aviation companies, they will basically use the international flight route. That is, whenever they will take the aeroplane to Singapore, they will get the repairs done in Singapore. Whenever they'll take the flight to, let's say, Abu Dhabi, they will get the repairs done there. So what is happening right now is these civil aviation companies are outsourcing these maintenance expenditure or maintenance services to foreign companies. And that is also leading to outflow of dollars from India because they're getting these services done from outside India. So government of India says, we want to develop India as an MRO hub. We want to develop India as a MRO hub. And a lot of private sector companies have shown interest and they have started providing these MRO services within India now. Rather than we going outside, they have come to India, and even private companies in India have started providing MRO services. Which means, one, if MRO services more and more will be promoted in India, new companies will be set up or foreign companies will come into India. One, job generation will take place. Dollars were going out. Now these outflow of dollars will also be controlled, etc. So that is the reason MRO is being promoted. And please remember the next point as well. The cost that is incurred by the civil aviation companies under MRO, it accounts for around 15% of the total cost. Around 15% of their total cost. After spending money on fuel, the next highest expenditure that these companies incur is on MRO. Now, if competition is promoted in India, more companies will enter into India and start providing MRO, the cost might automatically come down, and that will help us in making the air travel affordable. So these are some of the issues or concerns associated with the civil aviation market. What kind of reforms have been undertaken by the government to promote civil aviation market? First one, we have allowed FDI. We have allowed FDI in India, right? We have allowed FDI in India. Now, 100% FDI is allowed through automatic route for greenfield project. 74% FDI is allowed under automatic route for brownfield project. Now, please tell me, all of you are able to understand the point here? Anybody has a doubt, sir, what is this greenfield? What is this brownfield? Very difficult, etc. Please do let me know. All of you remember what is greenfield project and brownfield project? Yes or no? Greenfield project and brownfield projects. Greenfield means a new project which has been constructed from beginning. Brownfield project means infrastructure is already present, right? So 100% FDI through automatic route, right, for greenfield, 74% FDI, right, for brownfield projects. We are also allowing PPP in airports, National Monetization Pipeline. NMP, National Monetization Pipeline. Under that, we are even covering airports. Even before that also, we were covering maintenance operations of the airports under the PPP route. UDAN scheme. Third one is UDAN scheme. Right? What is this UDAN scheme? UDAN stands for Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Right? That is basically English name for this is Regional Connectivity Scheme, RCS. Regional Connectivity Scheme. Now, Government of India found there was a policy. Right? Government of India announced a policy, National Civil Aviation Policy 2016. In the National Civil Aviation Policy 2016, Government of India said there are certain cities in India, right? Again, I'll come back to that also, don't worry. There are certain cities in India where airports are present, but no company is providing services in the airport. No company is operating flights using this airport. There are certain cities where there is no airport, but the city has become large enough, population is sufficient enough to develop airport in the city. So argument is simple. There are cities, tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Now many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by tier 2 and tier 3 cities? Please remember this. Whenever you are talking about cities in India, there's a classification. Whenever you talk about cities, there's a classification according to census. If a city has, right, let's say 1 lakh and more than 1 lakh. If a city has a population of 1 lakh or more than 1 lakh, this is called as tier 1 city. This is called as tier 1 city. If a city has a population of more than 50,000 but less than 1 lakh. If a city has more than 50,000 less than 1 lakh, this is called as tier 2 city. And if a city has more than 20,000 and up to 50,000, this is called as a tier 3 city. Again, it will go on tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 and tier 6. Last one is tier 6. So I'll repeat it again according to the census. According to census, we divide all the cities in India into 6 types. Tier 1 to tier 6. Highest is a tier 1, 1 lakh or more than 1 lakh, and the lowest is tier 6. And in tier 6, generally they will say population is less than 5,000. Population is less than 5,000. So understand the logic here. Government of India said there are tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Right? There are certain tier 2 and tier 3 cities where population is sufficient to have airports, but airports are not there. Even if the airports are there, right, nobody is providing services in the airports. So under UDAN, we started identifying such cities and started promoting civil aviation market in those cities. That is basically companies were promoted to provide flight services connecting these cities. Now, obviously, private sector company which government wants to provide services, flight services, they'll simply say it is too costly. For us to provide services, we will have to incur a lot of expenses, but revenue generation is very less. That is the reason lot of measures, lot of grants were given by the government under the concept of viability gap funding. Please do let me know. Do you remember viability gap funding? Please do let me know. Do you remember viability gap funding? So under the viability gap funding, grants were given, assistance was given by the government for a period of 3 years to any company which will start providing services, flight services from this airport. Right? But please understand the next point as well. Government announced it. Many private sector companies, especially regional companies, showed interest. But then came pandemic. During pandemic, many of these companies were not able to operate because there was a lockdown which was imposed by the government. Restriction on air travel was imposed. Many of these regional carriers were forced to shut down operations. They incurred losses. They had to shut down their operations. And even after pandemic, even though pandemic got over, even after pandemic, many of these civil aviation companies or carriers were unable to get sufficient revenue. They were unable to get sufficient revenue. Passenger traffic was very poor. The 3-year duration of a viability gap funding got over, and the government stopped giving funds to these air carriers, etc. So on one side, passenger traffic has become lower. On the other side, the assistance is also over. So many of these the carriers were forced to shut down. Many of them stopped providing services to these airports. So more than 400 routes have been launched under UDAN scheme. Many of these routes have been discontinued because these are not viable anymore for the air carriers. These are not viable. Financially, these are loss making for them. Right? Pandemic has affected the demand as well as right, it has also led to higher cost of operations. And please understand, aviation turbine fuel accounts for around 40 to 50%. Crude oil imports into India, if they become costly, automatically ATF fuel prices will also increase. That will reduce the profitability for these kind of companies. So these are certain important points regarding the UDAN scheme. But understand this. Government said, if I provide VGF to you, if I provide viability gap funding and you start operating in these routes, half of the seats, this was a condition, half of the seats you will have to sell at very, very low prices. That is at 2,500 rupees. 2,500 rupees if you're flying it for 1 hour. That is, if the route takes 1 hour, you'll have to charge half of the seats you'll have to charge only 2,500 rupees. And in case of helicopter, it was 5,000 rupees per hour of flight. Right? So these are certain very important provisions under UDAN scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. All of you okay with this? Right? All of you okay? So these are the various infrastructure points I wanted to discuss with you people, right? Under airports, under waterways, under ports, right? Under road sector, etc., etc. Now, if you have any kind of a doubt, please do let me know. Otherwise, we can take a break now. Let me know any kind of a doubt. So in order to do such reforms like UDAN, government should have not sold Air India, and airports as private firms will never make the air tickets economical. And please understand, these regional airports, small airports are generally operated by Airport Authority of India. Because if a private sector wants to operate these airports, they should be commercially viable. They should be commercially viable. Right? But these airports, small airports, are not commercially viable. Right? That is the reason you think of airports such as Bangalore, Kolkata, Delhi, Hyderabad, Mumbai. These are commercially very attractive for them. That is the reason they will concentrate on these bigger airports, not on regional airports. Okay? Wouldn't we discuss urban infrastructure separate topic? My dear, you read it, right? Everything you want it to be covered under economics. Please tell me, in what area should I cover urban infrastructure? Right? Again, you read it. Some of the things you will have to read it. You should not be expecting that everything, whatever is there, should be taught to you. That's not possible. That's not possible. Okay. What is automatic route? Under FDI, please understand there are two routes. One is basically the approval route, and second one is automatic route. What is this approval route? If you want to bring in FDI, you have to take approval of the government. permission of the government, right? And second one, automatic route. If you want to bring in FDI, you need not take any permission. You can directly bring and invest in India. Okay, done. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Okay, done. Let's take a break then. Let's take a break. We will continue the discussion. We'll continue the discussion regarding the next chapter, that is employment. Next, I'll be starting with employment. Very, very important. Please be very careful. Next, I'll be starting with employment. Questions are there. We'll come back to questions later. Right? Maybe at the end of the day, we'll come back to questions. After the break, we'll start with the concept of employment. Take a break then. Okay, take a break. Time is 8:25. I'll restart at 8:40. I'll restart at 8:40. Take a break. Okay, welcome back. Am I audible? Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Am I audible? Please do let me know. Okay, done. Thanks a lot. Let's start. Let's start. So next chapter I'll be discussing again. There are three important concepts. I'll be discussing all the three, not today, but all the three I cannot discuss today only. Employment. Second one is inclusive growth. Inclusive growth, and the third one is IMF, International Monetary Fund. So today we'll start, and Saturday we'll finish it off. Okay. So employment. So what we'll be discussing under the concept of employment, as usual, right? Employment or labor issues. I'm sorry, employment or labor force, types of unemployment. How do we measure employment, unemployment, employment elasticity and jobless growth, labor issues in India, certain reforms to address labor issues. Right? So that will be the scope of the chapter. Now let me start with the basic idea. The whole population can be divided into two groups. I'll repeat, the whole population can be divided into two groups. For simplicity, some of the books will divide that into four groups. Don't worry. So I will divide the whole population into labor force and non-workers. Labor force and non-workers. Now, what is the basic difference between labor force and non-workers? Labor force is that population which is willing to work, and generally will say in the age group 15 to 59 years, 15 to 59, 15 to 59. So the population which is in the age group of 15 to 59, which is willing to work, it is called as labor force. Now, if a person is willing to work, gets the work, and is paid for the work, I'll repeat the statement. If a person is willing to work, gets the work, and is paid for the work, that is basically called as employed population. That is called as employed population, workforce, employed population. And the person is willing to work, but doesn't get the work, and obviously because there is no work, the person is not paid. Is it okay? Don't ask me, sir, what about payment? A person is willing to work but doesn't get the work and is also not paid for not working. That population is called as unemployed. That population is called as unemployed. Now, what is this non-workers? Right? What is the idea of a non-workers? The population is not willing to work. It consists of population which is not willing to work. For example, I'll take one example very close to your heart. Again, do not take it personally. Civil service aspirants. Tell me now, civil service aspirants. Have you not seen people, aspirants, who are software engineers, who will simply say, I will quit my job, study for 2 years, study for 1 year, civil services. Can I say this is a population which is not willing to work? Right? A doctor will quit the job for higher studies. Is it not a population which is not willing to work? So I hope you understand. Do not use the term in a negative sense. Not willing to work means they're not interested in the work right now. They're not interested in the work job right now. So a population which is not willing to work, that can be non-workers. What about children? What about children? Think of it. Children. Sir, a child was there, 8 years of age. The child was willing to work. I provided work to the child. You might look yourself like a god. You might simply say, sir, I've provided work for a 8-year child. But my dear, it is illegal. It is a crime. Child labor is a criminal offense. Anybody who is younger than 14 years, you are not allowed to employ them. It's child labor. Child labor is not allowed. It's a crime in India. So what about the children? Can you employ them if they are willing to work? No, you're not allowed to employ them. So children below the age of 14 years? No. What about people above 60 years? Pensioners. What about people above 60 years? Pensioners. Those people who have already completed their services. They are retired now. They want to basically take rest now. They want to they basically say, I've served for 35 years, I've worked for 40 years. It is time for me to take rest. So population above 60 years. What about people who have been incarcerated, people who have been put behind the bars? So can I say these are certain examples of non-workers? All of you okay with this classification of the population? Anybody has a difficulty, please do let me know. I'll repeat the process again. The population can be divided into the labor force as well as non-workers. Labor force is that population which is willing to work, and non-workers is that part of the population which is not willing to work, which is children population, or the population below the age of 14 years, right? Population above the age of 60 years who are not willing to work. All of these are non-workers. Now labor force can be further divided into employed. Employed means you are willing to work, you get work, you get a job, and you will be paid for it. You will be paid wages or salaries for it. And unemployed is that part of the population which is willing to work but doesn't get the work. That is called as, right, the unemployed population. Okay, all of you okay with who is employed, who is unemployed, who is a non-worker? Do not be under the impression that all the non-workers are unemployed. No, right? Because many of the times you will simply say population can be divided into employed as well as unemployed. Below the age of 80 years or below the age of 14 years, you are not even supposed to consider them as a part of labor force. You are not even supposed to consider them, right? So employed, unemployed, and non-workers. This is basically the classification. Now, when you talk about unemployment, what are the types of unemployment? One is frictional, second one is structural, third one is seasonal, and the fourth one is cyclical. Frictional, structural, seasonal, and cyclical. Apart from this, there are many other types also. For example, there is a term called as a disguised unemployment. Let me know, have you come across this term earlier? We have discussed this, by the way. Disguised unemployment, right? Have you come across this? Of course, yes. Disguised unemployment. India faces disguised unemployment, right? Best example, agriculture sector, right? India faces underemployment also. Have you heard of the term underemployment? It is also very famous now. Underemployment basically means you're employed in a work where either the payment is very less, you have a very high qualification compared to what the job actually requires, etc. For example, sir, any example of underemployment you will say? Imagine I'm an engineer. I'm working as a Swiggy delivery partner. Think of it. I'm an engineer and I'm working as a Swiggy delivery partner. So don't you think the qualification that I have is much more than what the job actually requires? Of course, yes. Right. So underemployment, where the sufficient jobs are not available, right? Where the qualification is much higher, where I'm not utilizing all the skills that I have. All of this is basically called as underemployment. So India faces unemployment issue as well as underemployment issue as well. Now come back to these four types here. Let's go one by one. Frictional, right? A person will quit a job and after certain months will join another job. So can I simply say for certain number of days between one job to another job, for certain number of days, the person was unemployed. That is called as frictional unemployment. All of you okay with the first one? Please do let me know if anybody has a doubt. Frictional simply means a person is quitting a job, right? Person is quitting a job and after certain days will join another job. For whatever duration he took from jumping from one job to another job, that is basically called as frictional unemployment. Second one is structural unemployment. Let me connect it to current affairs. Right? Have you seen in recent times many companies adopting AI technology? Very simple question to all of you, and this is happening right now, right in front of your eyes. Please open up last 1 month's newspaper, you will realize it. Many companies, best example, Paytm, correct? They said we will adopt AI now, and when I adopt AI, certain number of people, I will not require these number of people for work. which means, please understand this, under structural unemployment, certain skill sets that I have will become useless. In structural unemployment, there is advancement in the technology, and as a result of which, the skills that I have will become useless. They will become outdated. And because of that, I will start losing my job. I will start losing the job. That is basically called as structural unemployment. Are you seeing structural unemployment right now happening in Indian economy? Please think of it. Are you seeing structural unemployment happening right in front of your eyes in the Indian economy? Introduction of, let's say technology such as electric vehicles, introduction of technology such as artificial intelligence. Is it not creating, right, structural unemployment in India? Of course, yes. This was asked last year in the exam. Right? In Indian economy, the unemployment is mainly because of structural unemployment now. And third point, if you basically put together frictional as well as structural, please remember this. If you put together both frictional as well as structural, this is called as natural rate of unemployment. If you put together frictional plus a structural, that is how many people are unemployed because they're shifting from one job to another job, and how many people are losing jobs because of introduction of a new technology and their skill sets becoming obsolete, outdated. That population is called as a natural unemployment rate. Right, so one is frictional, second one is structural, third one is a frictional plus a structural, natural. Fourth one, seasonal, or else let's take the same serial number. Third one, seasonal. What do you mean by seasonal here? Whenever there's a change in the season, for example, once Kharif season is over, let's say once the sowing under the Kharif season is over, don't you think some of the people will lose wage opportunities? Agriculture labor, best example for this is agriculture labor. If Kharif season will start, I will have to sow the seeds, so I will get a wage opportunity. Once the sowing season is over, I will not have the wage opportunity. Next, I will have to wait for Rabi season. Once the Rabi season will start, initially I will have the wage opportunity where I will be sowing seeds. After that, again, unemployment. So whenever there's a change in the season like this, cultivation season or weather, climate, etc., certain people will get jobs, certain people will lose jobs. That is called as seasonal unemployment. Next one, cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment means whenever the situation in the economy will change. For example, many people ask me, sir, what do you mean by situation in the economy? Let's say hypothetically, I'm not saying this will happen. Let's say hypothetically, tomorrow, Indian economy will fall into recession. Tell me, tomorrow Indian economy will fall into recession. Can this lead to unemployment in India? All of you will agree? Anybody has a doubt? Tomorrow, the economy will fall into recession. Can this lead to unemployment? Of course, yes. Or let's say health sector, crashes. Can this lead to unemployment? Civil aviation market crashes. Telecom sector crashes. Can this lead to unemployment in India? So whenever health of the economy will change, and as a result of this, unemployment is created, this is called as cyclical unemployment. Okay, this is called as cyclical unemployment. So all of you okay with this? Frictional, switching one job to another job, unemployment. Structural, introduction of new technology, your skill sets become obsolete, useless, structural. Frictional plus structural, natural rate of unemployment. Third one is seasonal, from one season to another season. Whenever there's a change in the season, certain people will lose jobs, seasonal unemployment. And whenever the health of the economy changes, certain people will lose the job. That is called as cyclical. In addition to this, what is a disguised unemployment? What is underemployment? And there is one more term called as open unemployment. Right? There is one more term called as open unemployment. Now, what is this open unemployment? Open unemployment simply means the job opportunities are available. Please understand this. Opportunities are there, but you voluntarily or involuntarily, right? You, right, as a job seeker, voluntarily or involuntarily, you will withdraw yourself from the labor force. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. What do you mean by open unemployment? Right? The job seeker, that is the person, voluntarily or involuntarily will withdraw himself or herself from a particular job consideration. That is called as open unemployment. Open unemployment. Okay, so these are the different types of unemployments. Please be very careful. UPC can pick up questions from any of these areas. You be very careful. Okay, now come back to the next. How is the employment unemployment measured in India? How is the employment unemployment measured in India? Please understand this point very carefully. Until very recently, just a second. Okay, until very recently, what we used to say is government used to conduct surveys which were called as employment unemployment survey. Okay, I'll repeat the statement. Until very recently, government used to conduct a survey. When I say government, Labor Bureau. Under Ministry of Labor, there's a department called as Labor Bureau. Labor Bureau used to conduct employment unemployment survey. Employment unemployment survey. Right? And in short, these surveys were referred to as EUS, Employment Unemployment Survey. But the issue with EUS was that these surveys were conducted once every 5 years. These surveys were conducted once every 5 years. For example, we conducted EUS for year 11 and 12. We conducted EUS for year 2016 and 2017. Now, very simple question to all of you. If you are conducting a survey to find out how many are employed, how many are unemployed, and this survey is used for policy making, but this survey is conducted once every 5 years, don't you think lot of times you are using outdated data for policy making? Yes or no? Please do let me know. Right? These surveys were conducted once every 5 years. We conducted this survey in 11 and 12. We conducted this survey in 16 and 17. Although for 16 and 17 we did not publish the data. Why, you will come to know now. Government of India was of the opinion that we are using the EUS data, EUS survey data for policy making. But these surveys are conducted once every 5 years. The labor market is very dynamic in nature. Labor market will keep on changing from 1 year to next year, from one quarter to another quarter. So we are using a data which is very old, which is outdated. That is the precise reason we have discontinued EUS, and instead of this, now we are using one more survey called as periodic labor force survey. Periodic labor force survey. Very, very important. Please remember this. Periodic labor force survey. In short, this is called as PLFS. PLFS. PLFS is conducted by National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, which is part of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, will conduct periodic labor force surveys, PLFS. NSSO, which is part of MOSPI, will conduct this survey. And under this, please remember this, the data is given for every quarter. Employment, unemployment data is given for every quarter in India. And it is also published for full year. It is also published for full year. For full year, the data is available. Now think of it. From a survey which was conducted once every 5 years, we have shifted to a survey which is conducted once every quarter. That is, data is available for every quarter, full year. Right? This will help us in better estimating, better understanding how many jobs are there, how many unemployed are there, right? What are the issues, and to adjust the policies accordingly. Right? So this is basically the idea. Now, whenever you whenever you look at the data collection, whenever you are looking at the data collection, generally the data collection is done using different methodologies. There are different methodologies. It is called as a status period. Status period. Different methodologies are used to collect the data from the people. And please understand this, all of these are surveys. All of these are estimates, because it is very difficult to get exact number of unemployed people in India, exact number of employed people in India. Because some of you are asking, sir, why are we conducting surveys? Very interesting question, by the way. I'll answer it. Why do we conduct surveys? My dear, the reason is simple. We can go to a bank, ask the bank how many salaried accounts are there. Right? I'll repeat the statement. We can go to a bank and find out how many salaried accounts are there, because whether you are in a private sector or in the government, if they want to give you salary, they will have to give it to account only. All of you will agree. They will have to transfer it to account, and from account you will withdraw your salary. So I can simply ask all the banks in India, whether public sector or private sector, how many salaried accounts are there. But please tell me, do you think everybody who is working in India will get their wages or salaries directly credited into the account? Think of it. Think logically. Right? Do you think everybody who is earning in India, who is having a job, their salary is directly, or wages are directly credited into the bank account? No. What about agriculture labor? What about self-employed? Think of it. What about self-employed people? What about people who are working in informal sector? A lot of people, they are paid wages in the form of cash. So that is the reason what government generally does is they will conduct surveys. They'll conduct a survey. And when they're conducting survey, how will they find out whether you're employed or unemployed? That is the reason there is a term called as employment status. Right? For example, there is one status called as UPS. Right? UPS, under which if you are employed, if you are having a job, I repeat, if you are having a job, right? If you're having a job, job means paid job, for more than half a year, that is for more than 183 days in the last 12 months, you're classified as employed. Is everybody okay with this? And some of you are asking, what is UPS? Usual principal status. Usual principal status. Under usual principal status, if you are employed, if you are having a job for in the last 12 months, if you are employed for at least 183 days, you are classified as employed, otherwise unemployed. Right? Because usual principal status had a very narrow definition. 183 days, very, very strict definition. We have one more type of status, which is called as a UPSS. Usual principal subsidiary status. Much more inclusive, I repeat, because UPS was very strict in the sense 183 days. For many people in rural part of India, they would be classified as unemployed, because 183 days, it is very difficult for them to have a wage job as such. That is a precise reason. To make it much more inclusive, we have one more status called as usual principal subsidiary status, UPSS, under which if you are employed, for 30 days also, if you are employed for 30 days also, then you're classified as employed, otherwise unemployed. So there are different statuses like this, using which you are classified as employed, unemployed by the survey agency. Now, once they collect the data, how will they use the data? How will they use the data to find out whether you are right, find out what is employment rate, what is unemployment rate, etc. These are the formulas. Please by heart these formulas, and these are not difficult. I'll prove it. Just give me 2 minutes, you will only understand. These are not very difficult. These are very, very simple. Why? Please look at formula number 1, formula number 3, and formula number 4. Please look at formula number 1, formula number 3, and formula number 4. All these 3, that is 1, 3, and 4, are connected. If you remember the first one, which is labor force participation rate, you can easily remember the third one as well as the fourth one. But what is the first one? LFPR, labor force participation rate. It represents out of the total population in India, how many people are willing to work? I'll repeat the statement. Out of the total population in India, how many people are willing to work? In the age group of 15 to 59 years, how many people are willing to work? Don't you think that's a very, very important indicator in order to estimate and find out what kind of contribution or what kind of production we can do over a period of time? That is, think of it. If LFPR for India is continuously decreasing, is it a cause of concern for the government or not? Let me know. Please think of it and do let me know. If LFPR for India is continuously, consistently declining, falling down, right, from 60% it will fall down to 40%, from 40% it will fall down to 30%, to 20%, etc. Is it not a cause of concern for the government? Why? Because more and more people are opting out of jobs. They're saying we don't want to work. I'm not even interested in the job now. They are opting out of the work. That is a cause of concern. Big cause of concern for the government. So that is the reason. First one is labor force participation rate. Formula is very simple. Labor force divided by total population. Now, please look at the numerator, labor force. Can I say labor force is divided into two parts, employed as well as unemployed? Correct? Labor force is divided into two parts, employed plus unemployed. Right? Now, please understand, employed plus unemployed, can I use a CSAT concept and derive two more formulas? I'll simply take employed divided by total population into 100. Right? Understand this. I'll take employed population divided by total population into 100. That will give me working population ratio or worker population ratio, WPR. And take unemployed divided by total population into 100. That will give me proportion unemployment ratio, proportion unemployed ratio. So please have a look at it. Are you able to understand that all the three, that is 1, 3 and 4, all the three are interrelated? If you remember one, you can easily derive the third one as well as the fourth one. Right? Any doubts so far? Any doubts so far? But they may be going for self-employment, sir. To some extent, the decrease is good. My dear, please understand, even those who are self-employed are counted as part of employed only. And the one student says, sir, if one person will shift from, right, let's say from a company job, to self-employment, this is called as casualization. It is called as casualization. Casualization means from, let's say, right, imagine you're a software engineer, you're a private sector company employee, but you will quit the company, you will start your own company. It is called as casualization. That casualization of the labor is done. But please understand, even if you are a even if you are a self-employed person, you are counted as part of employed person only. Right? So labor force participation rate, worker population ratio, and proportion unemployment ratio, PU. But the most important one, as far as I'm concerned, as far as UPSC is also concerned, the most important one is the second one, unemployment rate or unemployment ratio. Unemployment rate or unemployment ratio. Now, what is this unemployment rate or unemployment ratio? Out of the total labor force, please look at it. Out of the total labor force, that is, out of all the people who are willing to work in India, how many people are not getting jobs? Right? Out of all the people who are willing to work in India, how many people are not getting jobs? That is called as unemployment rate. That is, out of people who are wanting jobs, who have a CV, who are searching for jobs, how many of them are not getting jobs? That is called as unemployment rate or unemployment ratio. And there are two students, very interesting question by the way, who are asking, what is the difference between labor force and total population? My dear, did we discuss this 15 minutes ago? Did we discuss this? Is labor force equal to total population of India? Right? Where are you looking at? What are you listening to? Right, my dear? Hardly 15 minutes. Hardly 15 minutes. Right? Labor force is that part of the population which is willing to work. Which is willing to work. The population which is not willing to work, the child population, right, or the pensioner population, the people who have been put behind the bars, all of them will be called as non-workers. Labor force plus non-workers will give you total population. Okay, done. Now let me go forward. Let me go forward. Now in the context of India, there is a term called as jobless growth, right? Especially in the last one and a half decades, there is a argument that India has been experiencing a jobless growth phenomenon. Now, what do you mean by jobless growth phenomenon? Logic is very simple here. Jobless growth phenomenon is a period in the economy. It is a situation in the economy where GDP growth rate of the economy is very, very high and the employment growth rate is very, very low. I'll repeat the statement here. What is a jobless growth phenomenon? It is a situation in the economy wherein the economy experiences a very high growth rate. It experiences very good growth rate. But the employment growth rate is very, very low. It is very, very low. And in fact, in case of India, many experts looking at the GDP growth rate as well as the employment growth rate argue that we have been experiencing jobless growth phenomenon in the last couple of decades. Just to prove the point, I've given the references after the chapter. In NCERT, there is a chapter on employment. In NCERT book, there's a chapter on employment, right? What you will see in that chapter is one graph is there. You will see that in the last 2 decades, GDP growth rate has gone up like this, right? If this is a graph, GDP growth rate has been going up like this. Yes, of course, volatility is there, but employment growth rate is moving like this. Employment growth rate is very close to near zero like this, right? Below zero and above zero like this. What is the meaning? What is the meaning? There is a huge diversion. There's a huge gap between GDP growth rate as well as employment growth rate. Production of the final goods and services, production value has increased, but employment growth rate has not increased by a larger number. Such a situation is called as jobless growth phenomenon. Jobless growth phenomenon. Why do we argue that there's a jobless growth phenomenon in India? Let's try and understand certain arguments. First one, employment elasticity is very low in India. Employment elasticity is very low in India. Now, what is employment elasticity? Employment elasticity is a ratio of employment growth rate divided by GDP growth rate. Employment elasticity measures, or it is a ratio of employment growth rate divided by GDP growth rate. In simple terms, it measures how productive GDP is in terms of job generation. It measures how productive is GDP growth rate in terms of job generation. Meaning the argument is, if GDP increases, it generally means overall production in the economy is increasing, value addition in the economy is increasing. And when value addition keeps on increasing, automatically we expect that more and more jobs will be generated. More and more jobs will be generated. So that is the reason we have one ratio which compares how many jobs have been created in the last 1 year divided by how much is the change in the GDP, right? So from one time period to another time period, job creation divided by changes in the GDP. That is called as employment elasticity. Employment elasticity, right? So employment elasticity in case of India has been declining. Why? You'll understand it. Just give me a couple of minutes, I'll explain it. Employment elasticity in the context of India has been decreasing. Now, please tell me, if your employment elasticity will fall down from 0.4 to 0.2, can I say this is a situation wherein GDP growth rate is very high, employment growth rate is very low? Please think of it. Please think of it and do let me know. If your employment elasticity will fall from, let's say, 0.4 to 0.2, which has happened in India, which has actually happened in India. In 1990s, employment elasticity was 0.4. Recent data says employment elasticity is 0.2, which means GDP has increased. We know for a fact GDP has increased, but the numerator has not increased by a larger number, which means jobless growth. There is a phenomenon of jobless growth situation that is being experienced by India. Now, question, why? Why are we experiencing jobless growth phenomenon? Point number one, skilled labor availability in India is very low. Right? Skilled labor availability in India is very low. As per last year's economic survey, only around 11 to 12% of the labor has skill sets in India. Only around 11 to 12%. Whereas in other countries, China, it is more than 24%. In European countries, more than 50%. Some of the countries, it is more than 80-90%. So when you have lot of labor which is a skill, it is very easy to create jobs, right? Absorb them in the labor market, right? That is a problem. That is a skilled labor availability is a problem. Point number one. Point number two, labor laws in India are also very difficult to follow. Very, very difficult to follow. Why? Labor laws are formed by the central government as well as the state government, because the labor law falls under the concurrent list. Concurrent list, polity. Concurrent list means it is a subject on which both the center and the state can formulate laws. So labor law falls in the concurrent list. And because of this, central government also have multiple labor laws. State governments also have multiple labor laws. If you are a manufacturer, don't you think following multiple labor laws is very difficult for you? And lot of these labor laws are very strict in nature, very stringent in nature. And when these are so strict, so stringent, right, in favor of labor, etc., the companies, rather than hiring full-time labor, will prefer to hire part-time labor, will prefer to hire freelancers. Because if you have generally, please understand, most of these labor laws will become applicable to you if you have more than 10 employees. If you have more than 10 employees, automatically labor laws will become applicable to you. If you have less than 10 employees, hire freelancers, these labor laws are not applicable. So why there is this kind of a situation, right? Labor laws are very strict in India. Third one, capital intensive investments. Capital intensive investments, right? I hope you remember this. When you have investments more and more which are capital intensive, investment will happen, production will take place, but job generation will not be very high. Job generation will not be very, very high. Job creation will be lesser. Rather than this, if you invest more and more in labor intensive sectors, automatically more and more jobs will be created. Contribution to GDP will also increase. Majority of the contribution in Indian economy comes from services sector. And what is the issue with service sector? Majority part of the service sector is using technology, right, more than human labor. Whereas a lot of manufacturing sector, lot of parts of manufacturing sector, we require labor usage. So when you have more than 50% contribution coming from services sector, and in service sector, dependence on human labor is lesser, more on machineries, more on technology, automatically contribution will be higher, employment growth rate will be lesser. So all of you will agree, these are some of the reasons. These are some of the reasons why there is jobless growth phenomenon in India. Done? So let me stop the discussion here. We'll continue from the next slides, right? After this, etc., etc., we'll continue. Let me take up previous year questions now. Anybody has got any kind of a doubt regarding what I've discussed so far? Please do let me know. Anybody has got any kind of a doubt regarding what I've discussed so far? Open unemployment and frictional unemployment, where person leave jobs voluntarily, then what is the difference? Please understand, in open unemployment, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, because again, At a larger level, unemployment can be voluntary as well as involuntary. Unemployment can be voluntary as well as involuntary also, right? So, for example, if there is a recession, it will lead to involuntary unemployment. If you are getting a better job, it will lead to voluntary unemployment. So, open unemployment basically means a situation where the job seeker, voluntarily or involuntarily, will keep himself or herself out of a job consideration. Okay, now let me go to the next one. Right, let me go to the next one. Right, questions on planning. Let me take up questions, answer this, and then if there are any questions from your side, we will address it, then we'll wind up the discussion. Start now. Okay, 48% I have answered correctly. Despite being a high savings economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in output due to. Anybody has a doubt why D is the right option? Many of you have answered wrongly. I don't know why. Is it not an application of Harrod-Domer model? Let me know. Is this question not an application of Harrod-Domer model? We have discussed this planning. First 5-year plan, second 5-year plan, Harrod-Domer model. G is equal to S upon R. Now look at the question. Despite being a high savings economy, capital formation may not result in significant increase in the output due to, can I say, denominator also becomes higher? Simple question to all of you. Numerator is higher. There is not a big change in G. That is the outcome. Why? It is because the denominator is also higher. Denominator also has increased. Is it not because of this that there is no significant change in the output? Significant change in the growth will not take place. Right option is if capital output ratio also increases. Right? Many of you have answered wrongly. Why? What is the issue here? Did we not discuss if capital output ratio becomes higher, you might invest more money, but output will not change by much. Correct or not? I took example of a 100 rupee capital investment where capital output ratio is a 4 rupee, 8 rupee, 6 rupee, 2 rupee, etc. Did we discuss it last week? Okay, Baba, please be very careful. Next, 12th 5-year plan. Okay, again 48% have answered correctly. Factual question. Factual, nothing is there conceptual in this. The main objective of 12th 5-year plan. What is the main objective of 12th 5-year plan? Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. Arey Baba, you're not revising. That becomes a problem. Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. That is a central, the main objective of 12th 5-year plan. It is just a factual question. Nothing is there in this. No concept at all. It is the right option is option D here. Faster, sustainable, more inclusive growth. Next one. Okay, 44% have answered correctly. Slightly tricky. Slightly tricky. Let me explain this. And many will say, sir, these kind of terminologies were not discussed, etc. Let's start. With reference to India's 5-year plans, which of the following statements is or are correct? From second 5-year plan, there was a determined thrust towards a substitution of basic and capital goods industries. Correct or wrong? You tell me. Second 5-year plan, Mahalanobis strategy. Mahalanobis plan, heavy industrialization plan. And what was the logic of Mahalanobis strategy? Rather than importing these goods, we will manufacture them. Basic goods will manufacture them in India. Capital goods will manufacture, right? Consumer goods we will manufacture. So is the first statement correct? Let me know. Is the first statement correct? Yes, first statement is correct. The fourth 5-year plan adopted objective of correcting the earlier trend of increased concentration of wealth and economic power. In the first, second, and third, Government of India, I told you initially for the first couple of 5-year plans, Government of India wanted to follow the concept of trickle down theory. Trickle down theory. Under the trickle down theory, Government of India expected that our focus will be growth. And when growth we will achieve, automatically, right, employment will be generated, right? More and more jobs are going to get generated. Other sections of the society are going to get the benefit, etc., etc. But did that work out? Did that particular policy work out for India? No, this did not work out. And that is a precise reason you will see that after a couple of 5-year plans, government will start promoting social welfare programs. Government will start introducing Garibi Hatao campaign. Government will start introducing 20-point programs, etc., etc. Statement is correct. Statement is correct. Please remember this. Third one, fifth 5-year plan. For the first time, the financial sector was included in integral part of the plan. No, this is wrong. Why? Banking sector, is it part of financial sector? Is banking sector part of the financial sector in India? Yes. Banking sector was integral part of 5-year plans. Can I say in the fourth 5-year plan? Let me know. Right, banking sector was an integral part of the plan. Nationalization, basic idea, nationalization. Fourth 5-year plan, yes. So it was not the fifth 5-year plan. In fact, it was the right in the fourth 5-year plan itself. So 1 and 2 are correct, right? So right option will be option A, 1 and 2 only. Okay. Now, descriptive question. This was there in the mains paper 2 years ago. Last year, no question has appeared in planning as a concept or Niti Aayog in the mains. How are the principles followed by Niti Aayog different from those followed by erstwhile Planning Commission? Right? What is the difference between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog? That is a basic idea of a question. So 250 words, 15 marker. Please do let me know. Did we discuss the comparison between right the Planning Commission as well as Niti Aayog? Let me know. Right, the comparison between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog. Did we discuss that? Planning Commission, right, basically had no representation of the states. Niti Aayog has a governing council where there's a representation of the states. Planning Commission followed a top to bottom approach. Niti Aayog follows bottom up approach. Planning Commission had a financial powers. Niti Aayog does not have financial powers, etc., etc. This is basically the question. The question is basically that you are supposed to make a comparison between the Planning Commission as well as Niti Aayog. We have discussed that. You can write in a form of a paragraph comparing both the Planning Commission as well as Niti Aayog. Done. So this is the descriptive question which has been asked right in the last 2 years from the concept of Niti Aayog and Planning Commission in the UPSC mains examination. References, these are the references. For employment also I have given the references. Please use the references and read, revise, update with current affairs, again revise. Done. So these are the things that I wanted to discuss today with you people. Now if there are any questions regarding whatever I have discussed, if there are any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, we can stop the discussion. Okay. Sir, when will you discuss IMF? Saturday. World Bank is being discussed by IR faculty I will discuss IMF. I'll discuss IMF, don't worry. Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? Please do let me know. What do you mean by investment is capital intensive? Arey Baba. Capital intensive means you will invest, but mainly into machineries. You will invest mainly into machineries, right? You will invest in the capital, right? For example, manufacturing of ships, manufacturing of steel, production of aluminum, aeroplanes, etc. So in that case, investment is very high. No doubt, investment is very high, but not in labor, but in purchasing capital. That is called as capital intensive. Okay, how can I get Tamil Nadu economics, my dear? Right? I don't know how many times I'll have to explain this to you people. Can you see a link here? Why do you think? Tell me, just out of curiosity, I'm asking, why do you think I've given two links at the bottom of every reference table I've given you? Why do you think I've given a link? Just for fun. I want you to check out these links and close the web page. Very simply because these are the links where you will get all these books. I know because many of the students, right, you are so busy with UPSC preparation, you can't go to Google and type Tamil Nadu Board Economy book. That's it. All you need to do is that. NCIT book, right? PDF, download. That's it. You need to type only that. But I know you people are very busy with your UPSC preparation. You will not have time to search all of this. I have done your work. You can simply take this, paste the link in the Google search bar. Now, please don't ask me where is the search bar. Sir, I did not find the search bar in my Google Chrome. I did not find it in my Safari, etc. Please don't tell me that. Right? So paste it in the search bar. It will take you to a web page. All these books, different standards are there. 5th standard, 6th standard. Go to the respective standard. In that, download the book. Free of a cost. Free of a cost. Okay. What is disguised unemployment? Disguised unemployment simply means where more than required number of people are working. I repeat, more than required number of people are working. Because you are using more than required number of labor units, productivity of the labor will not change. That is the reason they will also say marginal productivity. Marginal productivity means change in the productivity is a zero under disguised unemployment. Okay. Question number 1 in planning. Question number 1 is there is increase in the savings. An economy experiences high savings, but there is no significant change in the growth. Why? Right? Because under the Harrod-Domer model, it says you want to change the GDP, then increase your savings, reduce capital output ratio. If savings increases, basic CSAT concept now, you'll have to apply CSAT. G is equal to S upon R. If numerator increases, but there is no sufficient change, significant change in the output, it is because of the fact that denominator is also increasing. Correct or not? Numerator increases, but there is no such a change, a significant change in the outcome because the denominator is also increasing. That is a capital output ratio. So capital output ratio becomes higher. That is the reason despite having higher savings, G will not change by much. GDP will not change by much. Okay. Sir, is this your last class today? I'll repeat it again. According to the schedule, yes, it is a last class. Yesterday, there was no class because of a technical issue. So what I will do, whatever is left out and whatever doubts you are having, I will address it on Saturday's class. So please join on Saturday, same timing, nothing will change, same timing, join. We will complete IMF, we will complete inclusive growth as well as employment, whatever is left out. Then whatever questions you have regarding economics, I will address it. Okay, done? Any other doubts? Right? So last point before I stop the class, read well. Do not complicate economics. Economics is technical. I know that. Trust me, I've been teaching for more than 10 years, been a student for more than 15 to 18 years now. So I know economics is technical. You do not make it technical. Stick to the basics. If you want to understand, sir, should I read all these technical aspects of economics or not? Look at the past 5 years question papers. Look at past 5 years question papers, you will understand. UPSC doesn't ask you technical questions. UPSC will not ask you to write the integration equation, etc. Keep it simple, understand the concept, update with current affairs, solve previous year question papers, right? And that should be more than sufficient. That should be more than sufficient. Okay, so that's it from my side. Tomorrow, a new subject will start. Please join sharply at 6 o'clock. Please do not be late. All right, as usual, classes will continue tomorrow. Only that economics will not be there. Another subject they are going to start. Okay, done. Take care then. See you again on Saturday. At the last class for me, we'll finish off whatever part is left out. And any doubts that you have, you can shoot it to me in Saturday's class. Take care. Have a great day. All the best.